Welcome to episode 60. We're there.
Is it?
This is 60.
Man, that's nuts. I approve, though.
I approve.
Yes.
And I don't even know what we're talking about tonight. I really don't. I forget. I feel like we talked about, maybe we should talk about DOGE. I don't know what we're really talking about tonight.
Well, I wrote down those, the couple of things that we at least mentioned. Let me pull them up real quick. And by real quick, I mean...
Painfully slow.
Oh, no, that injury is messing with my clicking arm. I had because we talked about the elephant and everything last time. Here we go. Yeah, I put down Doge, best fan theory ever. The bullied my bully video you sent me. There's mostly just videos that we share with each other because they're stupid. I have in here Bridget credit drop.
Oh, we can definitely talk about that too. Yeah.
And then, I know what it was. I sent you that guy who hacked the lawyer registration system and started practicing law without a degree.
You did send me that. I wish that was an American story. I feel like it'd be way more relevant if it was here in America.
But it's still funny and it's still good and it still raises certain questions that I think do apply to, let's just say, most organizations across the world.
All right, you tell me, where are we going tonight? Where do you want to go with it?
Let's hear the credit drop, because this sounds like a Tom ranting thing, and we really got to get you revved up, and then we can talk about this guy.
This is the second week in a row I'm sipping on rye while we record. Yeah, so we're sitting on the couch last week, and Bridget and I, all of a sudden she gets a notification. The kids are in bed, like everyone, we're trying to wind down for the evening, and she gets a notification that her credit dropped like 19 points, which is not something my wife has probably ever seen in her life. My wife has very good credit. She's worked her whole life not to screw it up. She's the opposite of me. When I was young, I was stupid with my first credit card and did damage to my credit and never cared, and trying to build it back up ever since. My wife has always been way more responsible and has taken good care of her credit. So for her to get a 19-point credit drop in a day, it's just like an eye-opening what the hell kind of moment.
Yeah, that's like a new mortgage application or something, though.
Right.
It's like, that's that kind of level.
So it turns out two different things happened. One, we pull it up and she looks at the report, and one, her student loan debt is literally doubled. And I mean, it's already six figures, right? So you don't want to see that double. But my wife, who's got her doctorate in physical therapy, she's got two different balances being carried for her student loan to two different organizations, one of which did not exist the day before. And we're kind of looking at that and going, what the hell? This is our government's fine job of making things more efficient and streamlining things. The Department of Education and the debt that she still owns on federal loans still exists there on her credit report, as well as the new organization that everything's being handed off to showed up and apparently is also carrying her balance. So instead of waiting until there could be like a smooth transition of information, now it looks like she owes two sets of student loans for the same amount to two different organizations, which significantly increases her debt, way above that 30 or 35% they recommend you be at. So that was awful and horrifying, but at least we figured it out and went, okay, well, this makes sense. At least we can see how that would happen. Then she finds out, and a shout out to Chase, which is I'm pretty sure where you said you worked, and you've said some nice things about Chase in the past, despite the fact that they are in your past.
Well, I have plenty of not nice things to say.
We're not going to say those tonight. We're going to leave the not nice things to say to me, so that one of us has some good faith with businesses. As much fun as it is to write the not sponsored by Lowe's script and to write the McDonald's mid break, these are fun things for me to write, and it's nice to hear you say them.
I don't have any fun reading them at all.
I will say I want to keep one of us at least saying nice things.
And Freedom Mortgage.
Freedom Mortgage. I forgot about those. Anyway, yeah. Well, I should do a follow-up on that, actually, because that's still a mess. But yeah, so it turns out that somebody was trying to apply for credit cards in my wife's name and steal her information as well. This happened like concurrently. And so that affected it as well. And Chase was the first company to kind of ping us back and be like, hey, we declined this credit application because it looks like fraud. We want you to know, blah, blah, blah. And they sent her the message. Everyone else sent us like a letter saying, we've declined your credit, whatever. But they didn't really say why. And Bridget's guy didn't apply for any of these. This is kind of odd. But someone got her information and was applying, and that's why her credit got pinged. We thought it was just the financial loans at first, but someone's got my
Hmm.
wife's information and is going pretty hard. I think we've gotten 4 different notifications now of it being rejected. So she's locked it down, and nothing's going to be accepted in the near future, and everything's being figured out by the credit company. But wow, like first time this has happened to us in this way since she was in Germany and someone stole her information in Germany. This is the first time since then. It's been 20 years.
See, that's probably not a coincidence. Not really. I mean, it's,
I agree.
that for that to happen around the same time,
The same time, the same day.
right? There's either someone involved in that process between one of the two companies snatched a couple of things and
Yep.
started, and now is rolling through them, or something got pushed out to some little extra server along the way, and someone just happened to see it who was farting around in there, probably doing something else they weren't supposed to do, and realized what they had and took what they could. I mean, it just seems like these are related. It would be
Yeah.
interesting if they weren't.
I would be shocked if they weren't. And it
Yeah.
brings up a really big question. Like, I know we said we may or may not go into Doge tonight, but one of the big
Yeah.
concerns about Doge is when Musk and Doge started getting all of the personal information and health records and all this information for people that are Social Security, veterans. They got all this weird information that they had no business getting and they didn't need. And they kept saying, it's not a big deal. We're not getting that privileged information. We're not using it. But for veterans like me, the big concern is, well, if you don't need it, why are you getting it? And it's not because I think Elon Musk cares about my social or my credit or my what I've got available. But there are going to be people in these organizations that are going to take advantage of opportunities like this because some people are bad. I think that's what happened here. I think somebody was involved in handing this information off from one department to the new one, and they took the opportunity to sell some of this off, to keep some and use it, whatever it was. They took an opportunity because of this transition of information to do something unethical, immoral, illegal. And my whole concern with Doge is the same thing. No, I don't think Elon Musk cares about me and my bank account. Not one bit. I'm not a drop in the bucket for him. He makes in a minute what I make in a year. I'm not worried. He's not worried about me. But there are people in the organization, government employees and private employees, who will take advantage of that situation. And I feel like it's part of that same concern. I really do.
I think that's probably, I mean, that's a fun conspiracy, but I think it's much more likely. I don't even know if I could find it or remember it. It was some big news story like a year or two ago now. Some guy found some back door on some government system that just happened to be like pinging at the wrong rate, slower than it should have been. And he found it was some like hacked thing that was put in somewhere for like all of Microsoft or something. I couldn't remember what exactly that was. I'd have to find it again. I would think it's much more likely to be some bad actor, third party, not directly involved with at least the organizations involved in this. Some other, and you would be hearing about it if it was an actual government infiltration, because there would probably be more of this widespread and it would look much more random. But if you only have a few people, that means that this stuff was bouncing around some third party server, or it's only with certain people with certain credit entries at certain spots. And someone had a little like leech on the back door, like a back door on those systems to pull info, at least when it was being processed in certain ways. So my guess is they got Bridget's info and like 1,000 other people or 500 other people because, for example, all of these people have like a Target debit card. And there was a big scandal. I don't know if you remember this. I was still at Chase when it happened. So that puts this at least like probably 10-ish years ago, maybe a little bit more. There was a massive like Target debit card breach. And because of the applications that Target takes for their red cards, they had something like 1.4 million people. It was a 7-figure number at least, with compromised names, addresses, social security numbers, like everything, because someone was able to hack in and just take all the information from all these stored, applications. And they didn't even hack Target directly, I don't think. I think they hacked one of the people that handled Target's data, one of the data centers. It was a different third party, but that was what they got into. And, major corporation, millions and millions of people. So to me, this is probably something like that. Some server from some company who's helping hold some of this data probably had a little backdoor switch that was at least catching certain types of things, at least when they pass through. I just feel like if some government employee was trying to sell stuff off, you'd be seeing something more widespread and also more random.
I don't know. I mean, government employees are just normal employees. I mean, they're
They
normal
are,
people.
but
Like, I think they're going to do the same thing that, normal people in this situation are doing.
well, and that's my thing too, though. Like it to everybody. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, so that's not actually true. Think about how many people really have access to your social security number.
Oh, everybody, because I was a veteran. Like, my social security number is everywhere.
Well,
There's so many websites for the VA that use it as a login. It gets passed around. It's on every file. It's my social security number, unfortunately, is everywhere.
I was a 22-year-old, maybe 23, hired just to be a banker in a Chase branch. Any Chase customer, I had their social security number.
Yeah.
I could just search by name and I could pull it. And then they put through this like, oh, well, we're going to shield your social even on the banker systems. But you just go to the document center and pull up the signature card or any account opening document ever. And it's there because it has to be. You had these. Now, where Chase actually did well with this was because Chase is so big, because they have so many bad actors that actually work within their systems, they have a pretty robust internal fraud system. So even back then, they could track, oh, you're logging into people that aren't in your market at all, that have never visited your branch. What the hell are you doing? And they would question you on that because there are plenty of full-time jobs just devoted to that.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, medical systems do that now because of HIPAA.
Yeah.
Like, if my wife were to look up someone who wasn't a patient of hers, somebody gets a notification somewhere and she gets investigated and she has to explain why. When I was a police officer, if I pulled up someone and somebody thought it was odd, they could query the name against, me, and they would see if there's any connection or not. And if not, they would come talk to me. And if I couldn't justify it, I could lose my job as a police officer. That had to be for a reason. But the job that I'm in now, we've got all sorts of files and things are need only. And if you don't have an actual legit interest, whether you're authorized to look at that file or not, if it's not tied to something you're doing, you get pulled in a room and talked to about, espionage stuff. It's like, are you doing this? Are you selling this?
Well, that's for you though. But all it takes is one shitty regional manager at any company like this to look the other way or whatever, and that can run amok in any one of these companies because everything would stop with them. They would be the one who would be required to report it further up the chain kind of thing. So it's everywhere. So that's why when stuff like this happens, I just sit there and think, well, of course they have access to this stuff. Why wouldn't they? It'd be kind of weirder if they didn't. You couldn't,
Well, it might not even take a shady regional manager with all the personnel cuts that the government is making right now in federal employees. It might just be a simple matter of a certain number of supervisors get cut, and now you've got 2 of them doing the job that 6 of them did previously, and they just are overworked and don't have the time to supervise all these new people and pay, super good attention.
No, maybe I don't think it's just supervisors getting cut though. I think
No, I agree. I agree. But a lot of times, if you're merging a couple of departments to save money, what you wind up with is fewer supervisors or few managers and more people.
And you have the readjustment period and all that. I mean, I guess this is where we differ a little bit because for me, I never trusted the government before to really truly take care of my info and my data anyway. I'm only here, sort of in protest. And so someone who's actually trying to streamline stuff a little bit to me is welcome. And it would suck if my stuff gets, booted out there and I have to, work on fixing it. And that would be really freaking annoying. But the system needs an overhaul, I think. It just alone. And I think that's I'm willing to put up with it. I realize that makes me in the minority of most people will want to put up with something until it affects them. And then they're suddenly not fans of it. And I keep trying to remind myself that this might happen to me, but it's better for all of us, I think. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Okay.
But that is annoying.
That's the credit story. That's all we've got. Nothing terribly exciting there.
Yeah. So let's talk about Doge.
Let's talk about Doge. Screw it. Let's go there.
Yeah, let's do it. I will put the article again as an older article, 2 or 3 months old now, but it's a really, really good summary of just kind of what they were doing in various spots. I think it's a good primer for it. I pulled some screenshots too of the stuff that I actually wanted to reference in it. So, because it is a lot and I don't want to scroll through and make you guys listen to me scroll. It's very annoying. Oh, look, there's Mr. Lewis outside of the McDonald's.
I meant to get an update on him and I never did. I wanted to have that ready for tonight, and I completely forgot to do it.
Yeah, we could probably figure that out later. Okay, I should do the CFPB later because I hate them. Here's the first one. Is Elon Musk a government employee? Musk is classified as a special government employee with the scare quotes and everything. A special government employee, or SGE, is someone, quote, who works or is expected to work for the government for 130 days or less in a 365-day period, according to the Department of Justice. The role was created in 1962 as a way to enable the government to tap outside expertise, and it can be paid or unpaid. Musk is not paid for his work as a special government employee, and therefore he does not need to file a public financial disclosure report.
Fine with the appointment of a special government employee. I feel as though a lot of cabinet members are essentially that. Eventually they get vetted and they're permanent and they get paid. But I mean, a lot of times you're bringing somebody on for very niche experience and in a very dialed in, locked in, laser beam focused sort of area. I think that makes sense. And I think that's fine. What I disagree with, and actually, I love the spirit of this beast. I love the idea behind it. This is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in American history. It makes sense that if you want to take the way that our government is spending and you want to turn it into a successful business model that's sustainable, you bring someone in with that kind of experience and that background. And this is a guy who did a great job building from scratch an empire that is still rapidly growing and expanding. So I think it makes a lot of sense in the spirit of things. And just the fact that, yes, our government wastes money and we should try to waste less makes all the sense in the world to me. So yes, agree with this so far. I'm okay with this in theory.
Okay, same. I do think, and this is probably a rabbit hole that we shouldn't go down, slash I don't think I can really, because I'm not well versed enough in this. Younger me used to think that the government should be run like a business. It should look to be profitable every single year, have a surplus, yada yada yada.
I have said that plenty of times too.
I'm not so sure that's actually the best course. I do think we need to look for balancing budgets. I do think there also needs to be some flexibility towards running deficits when it makes sense, during certain world crises or trade wars or any other, like political move that you want to make. You want to actually have sort of an additional flexibility with the government, because whether you like it or not, I mean, I personally think government is a literal necessary evil. It's something that I wouldn't actually want to have, but I think the world has to have it because otherwise you have anarchy.
Yep.
And just the way the world works, you just have to have a government. You have to, even if you don't like it. But I do think it can't be entirely a business, at least in some of its operations. It does have to have a certain ability to not balance a budget, at least when it's called for. I think you need to slap some more restrictions around it or put in place some of the older ones again. But I don't like it legitimately as a business. What was interesting for me for this was I didn't realize that a special government employee is a 130 days or less kind of deal. That's like what, 40% of the year?
Yeah.
I mean, which,
4 months,
if you take weekends off, like, I don't know, but that like turns into half a year maybe. That to me that makes more sense. That would also explain why we're not getting like daily updates from him and he's shit posting on X all the time instead. That would make more sense for what the process actually is. He's sort of the like pseudo oversight. He's like quality control maybe, really. And he just, because of his status, kind of gets that extra. I also can't decide if he should actually be paid or not for it. I kind of like the idea of these rich bastards not being paid, because maybe that shows some actual motivation to fix stuff that's out of the, goodness of their hearts. But I don't know. I guess I just being paid makes it an easy leap for why they do it. You get a little extra money on the side, but also getting paid sort of clouds my vision of like, maybe they're just doing it for a little extra money and the government step in. Maybe being unpaid gives them more scrutiny, and I prefer that. I just don't know.
I feel he should be paid for it. I think it should be mandatory that if you're working for the government, you get paid. It should, how much that needs to be, I don't know.
I kind of feel that way too. Like, yeah, it could be
minimum wage, like $10 an hour or something, and
Right.
or some sort of contract,
Right.
But
There needs to
yeah,
be something, yes. Because if you're not getting paid cash to work for our government, then I have to wonder why you're doing it. And it raises questions about all kinds of illicit means and motivations.
right.
It's the same reason that when you win a poker hand and someone else folds to your river bet, that in most casinos you still have to turn over your cards face up to and show them to win the pot, even though nobody called you. You
Right.
have to show that there's no collusion. You have to show that everything was ethical and on board. If you're working for the government for no money, then I start to wonder, well, why are you doing this? And very rarely is the answer going to be an honest patriotism and love for this country. Sometimes that might be the case, but
Yeah.
very rarely will it be. More often, what we find is that people are getting money from other things. There are other reasons they're doing this. There are business deals being done in the background. And also, just as a business owner and someone who worked, contract work for a long time and still does editing work on the side for stuff, I am leery of anyone who offers to do anything for free.
Yeah, because
I'm leery
Tin
of it.
Staffel.
Well, I
No
mean,
such thing as a
yes,
free lunch.
that's a part of it. But also, I've had people sell my stuff off. I've had people that I've done work for, and they've offered to do it for free, and then they take it and they sell it off to other people, and all of a sudden, I'm getting alerts about how something that I did is being found in other websites and it's being found other places, and they're
Right.
plagiarizing and reselling work that I submitted. People don't do anything for free because work has value. Like, I won't do anything for free anymore except the volunteer work that I do with veterans once a week. I do that for free because I need to know I'm helping people in some way, and helping veterans with PTSD is something I can relate to personally, and it matters to me, and it helps me to have some sense of self-accomplishment and some self-actualization in my life. It's something I feel I need to do, and so that I do for free. But I don't do anything else for free anymore. I guess the podcast I do for free. I guess I pay money for the podcast still. But when I have people all the time who find me on the Editorial Freelance
Well, that's not
Association
free.
website.
That's a negative.
That's right.
That's different.
I have people all the time find me on the Editorial Freelance Association website, and they'll send me an email and say, "Hey, I've got this manuscript I'm working on, and based on what I see on your profile and who you've worked with and the kinds of things that you do, this would be a really great fit for you." I engage back and say, great, I'm interested. If you want to send me a sample, I'll make sure that we're a good fit for each other. I'll send you my rate sheet. I'm EFA compliant. I follow, all the guidelines that they offer as a paid member in good standing. I want to make sure I abide by the rules. So I'm very transparent. And they respond back with, well, I actually can't afford to pay you. And I get that a lot. Like, honestly, I probably get 3 of those emails a week where someone wants me to do a professional editing or professional writing on an idea of theirs, ghostwriting, but they don't want to pay me for it. They want me to do it for free. And sometimes there's this, well, I'll pay you on the back end, or I'll give you a percentage. And I can't stand when that's the only substantive offer. If I have to put 600 hours of work into a project, and you're telling me that you're not going to pay me until a year from now, that doesn't work for me, because my work has value, and I have kids to pay for and kids to feed and a mortgage to pay for. Apparently, I have wasps in my basement I have to deal with. Like, there are all these things that pop up. My work has value and my time has value. And frankly, I'm done doing anything for free because I know it's valuable. Anyone who is willing to do that without payment, I'm just leery and suspicious of automatically. There was a long time where I did free work for people, and I did good work, as good as I could, as solid as I could. But I've also gotten scammed, and I've had people try to scam, and I've had people just try to take advantage and exploit. I'm not doing that anymore. And anyone who is a professional, who is my age or older, and who is offering to do things for free, I'm sorry, I just don't trust you. It's stupid, it's silly, but I don't trust you if you're doing it for free.
You have white Anglo-Saxon Protestants in your basement.
Not that kind of wasp.
Okay,
That would be
sorry.
easier to deal with. I could bury those bodies in
I don't
3.2
know about
acres and
that.
they
You
never be
can't-
found.
You can't raid them though.
Well, no, but that's
you
easy to
can't spray
find them
them.
and take care of them. Turns out the other kind of wasp is harder to find. We had one in a box for a toy that was sitting on our shelf and unpacked for the last 2 months. And my son took it off the shelf today to open it and play with it. And there was a wasp inside, and it stung him. First time he's been stung by a wasp. So I was trying to get some work done, and all of a sudden I hear him crying, and his
He's
sister,
never gonna play with that toy again.
right, his sister screaming, he got stung by a wasp. Tears are coming down his face. To his credit, once I got an ice pack on it and I told him to buckle down and take some breaths. He was very good about it. My son is not tough. Of all my kids, my son is the least tough. But lately he has done a great job being tougher, and he did a good job with this. And actually, I know we share a lot of dad fails. I'm going to slip a really big dad win in here because this was a good
this is
one
before or after the beaver.
This is way after the beaver was 2 weeks ago. We're
so
past the
you've
beaver.
learned. You've learned now.
I've learned. So I asked where the wasp was, and sure enough, they tell me they can describe where it was. It was in this box. It's in the basement, and blah blah blah. So I go back down to the basement with a rolled up magazine in my hand, and I'm ticked off because you don't sting my kid, damn it. And I go down here looking for this wasp, and I find the wasp, and I whack it good. Wasp is dead. It's sitting on top of a cardboard box, so it's still twitching though, right? So it looks like it's alive, but it's not going anywhere. So I bring the wasp upstairs in the cardboard box, and Desi freaks out when I bring this thing up. He's like, no, it looks like it's still alive. I'm like, buddy, it is still a little bit alive, but it stung you. Don't you want to be the one to kill it and flush it down the toilet? And I allowed him to hold the cardboard box, to dump it in the toilet, and to flush the toilet. And I gave him the last win. I gave him control back of the situation. This way he didn't feel like he was just a victim. This way he kind of got the last laugh, if you will. But in my mind, it kind of led him to that the wasp didn't defeat him. And I was curious how this might work and how it might play out. Like, I'm going to let you dance in the ashes in this burned out enemy. And sure enough, he flushed it and he celebrated and he seemed to feel better. And whereas before he was afraid to go back down to the basement, I asked him if he wanted to come with me to get the wasp, and he was afraid to. He went right back down and played. He picked up a game controller and played some Street Fighter and was cheering because he could still use his hand. He was afraid he was going to lose the use of his hand.
This was your chance to do the "we're going to have to amputate" that joke.
No. I can't. No. After the whole the skinwalker thing, and I'm not trying to do that again with my kids.
This
I'm
is
learning from
mafia
dad fails.
style. You were like, "Oh man, this guy assaulted you.
Yep.
Here, we beat the shit out of him. You hand him the handgun and go finish him off."
Basically, what this was. Yeah, it's basically what it was
Jesus.
with my 7-year-old. And you know what? I think it worked. I think it was good.
I feel like you sprinkling the chokums in McDonald's was the first red flag that you were going to turn it. You were going to go all mafia style on just common insects.
My family is as recently back as my grandfather were very heavily involved in organized crime. I hear some stories from my aunts, and
Wonderful.
They did a lot of things and helped establish a local community in Massachusetts. And as like I said, as recently back as my grandfather on my father's side, apparently there was a very strong organized crime connection. So I'm not surprised that this is kind of my nature at this point. But no, I wanted to give him control. I didn't want him to just be traumatized. I didn't want him to just walk away from this thing up and take an L. I wanted him to get a win out of this. And I'm putting it in the column of dad win instead of dad fail because he was so much better afterward. My son, who again is not very tough, he bounced back in moments after flushing this thing. He celebrated. He told it, "Take that, sucker." He was so proud of himself, and it was good.
Well, we do need dad wins. That's true.
We don't share those very often.
No, I'm
sure
just
that
realizing now that I never actually really properly vetted you. So,
Well,
clearly,
it's okay. You wouldn't find anything. Don't worry.
yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't. I'll let you help me with my business.
But yeah, so anyway, that's how I feel. A really weird, long, circuitous path. That's how I feel about him not being paid. It's okay, I guess, but I feel he should be paid just because if someone's in a political position and they're not receiving money, I feel like they're just more inclined to be doing other things, just out of principle.
It's interesting that you say that too, because I actually probably do really prefer him to be paid, and it's not because of motivations or anything like that. I think it's more of a scrutiny thing. It's really easy, even for honest people who are trying to run a good ship, to pass over someone who's not at least getting compensation on the surface for something. Yeah. They just all kind of go in this bucket. You check your regular payment accounts and just, you don't see anything going out. So a lot of times you just pass over those people. And I feel like paying somebody even something, just usually they get a little bit of scrutiny. You double check, your accounts payable kind of stuff and their registration information and crap like that. And I think that's more it for me is it's not even just the value of the work. It's that you are doing some work. You should get compensated for it. That's the right thing to do. But also that means that you get some version of some attention, at least every so often.
Yep. You can hold someone accountable if you're paying them.
Right.
If you're
Or
not
they
paying
have to
them,
account for it.
right, and if you're not paying them, then there's always the "we'll screw you. You're not paying me, so whatever" kind of
Yeah.
approach. You know?
And you shouldn't use it as like a gotcha either, but like that does give you a chance where if you do find someone doing something illicit and you can't completely pin it on them, you might be able to catch them on, you didn't report this income correctly on something else, and you can at least, haul their butts in and do what you need to do another way. It gives you that like foot in the door to do what you actually need to get them for. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. But then again, it's like this is also a unique situation. This is Musk. You want to hear a crazy fact
I
about
love crazy
Musk?
facts. Yeah.
Yes, you do. I don't think I've said this on the cast. Maybe I have, but I don't think so. If you were given $500,000 cash every single day up through today, since the birth of Jesus, you would not have as much wealth as Elon Musk.
That is kind of crazy to hear.
Because that amounts to high 300s, like 380 something billion. And his last check-in was like, 412 or 420 or something
He's going to be a
billion.
trillionaire soon.
Well, right.
I saw an article about that recently. He's going to be the first. He's going to be a trillionaire.
But 2,000 years, 365 days a year, times 500,000, it comes out to to me, the funny part is that it's still like 40 billion short.
How old was Jesus when he was crucified?
33.
That comes out to $371 billion, 22,500,000.
Right. Some people say Jesus was born in 6 BC officially, by the way we catalog things. But the point is, you could get $500,000 a day and you're still not as wealthy as he is.
Wow.
You are missing out on like compounding interest and stuff, though, to be fair.
But you know what? I could take that to Foxwoods and put it on black and double it and have more than him. So let's go.
Yeah, sure. Just do it. Yes, I would like all of this on black and you throw like 50 flash drives or something.
I would like 2 terabytes of Bitcoin on black, please.
Jesus. No. Well, anyway, there you go. I always wondered what special government employee meant. So there you have it. I'll read these next two. We'll do reactions to this. When Mr. Trump launched, side note, I'm sorry, I have to say this, even though I'm far from properly, what's the word I'm looking for, respectful when I call our president Trumpy Trump and other things like that, it actually kind of annoys me that a lot of these presumed professional journalistic articles say Mr. Trump. He's the president.
Yeah. I agree. Even though I don't care for him, I agree. If you're writing in a professional space, he should be President Trump.
Most people, when they referenced, say, Obama, put President Obama in their articles like this. They did it for W. Bush, too. President Bush. Why is he Mr. Trump? I mean, I know he had the whole media everything beforehand, and maybe that's just how he's referenced, but I think that's a tiny little slight that some people do. Just call him the president. He's the president.
I'm sure that it's happened with every president, though. My guess is that this happens with every president. Because you've always got people who dissent and people who don't care for the president.
Well, yeah, no.
Usually one of them.
You do. But it seems like it happens more with him than it does. And
he's a lot less likable than most presidents in a lot of ways, too.
I don't know about that.
I get it.
Well, here's my super scientific metric for it is when I think about our past presidents, what's the like knee jerk moniker that comes to mind? And I don't think President Trump. I think Donald Trump or Mr. Trump, just for how I would expect to see it written. I can't remember any time I specifically saw Mr. Obama. It was always
I don't know
Barack
either, actually,
or President Obama.
Yeah.
And even Bush, President Bush or I think there was a George Jr. a couple of times. But yeah, anyway, sorry. I digress.
I remember him being referred to as W over and over.
He was, you're right. He was W over and over and over again. And I can't decide if that's a slight or not.
I think in this vein, it probably is. In the same way the saying Mr. Trump is, I think this has to be as well.
Yeah, he's just different from his dad.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's also, his dad was also a president. So it's like.
Yeah. But he wasn't the active president. So, you can just say President Bush and everyone's going to know who you're talking about.
Right, you should. Okay, anyway. When Mr. Trump launched DOGE, through an executive order last month. He housed it within the executive branch rather than creating it as an outside advisory committee. The order said that an existing White House office called the U.S. Digital Service, a unit that primarily works on government technology projects and that exists within the Office of Management and Budget, would be renamed the U.S. DOGE Service. The executive order also noted that a DOGE team of at least 4 members should be assigned to each other government agency. And these can be other special government employees, so other people that maybe only work 100 days out of the year, but team leader, engineer, HR specialist, and attorney. Those teams are tasked with, quote, a software modernization initiative to improve the quality and efficiency of government-wide software, network infrastructure, and information technology systems. I'll just include the second part so we don't go on forever. Quote, we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we will fix the mistakes very quickly, close quote, Musk said. Critics of the task force say that Musk, who runs companies including SpaceX that receive billions in government contracts, could be engaged in work through DOGE that may pose conflicts of interest with his private businesses, such as potentially gaining access to data about competitors' federal contracts. Boom. General thoughts now.
Yeah, that's a good one. So we recently turned the Next Up Music company into a nonprofit 501c3 organization. And when we did, one of the really big issues that we had in determining our board of directors was, is there a conflict of interest between the professional musician and his management team being on this board of directors, since a lot of the musicians that we're bringing in for festivals, for fundraisers, are also musicians that we might be booking for events that might later be sort of rolled into the stable and hired to play professionally. Is there a conflict of interest there? Is there a conflict of interest if the board of directors is the headliner for a band that's going to be one of the headline acts for the annual music festival, because technically they get paid for it and we're not supposed to be paying people on the board? Is there a conflict of interest? And that's a really serious question, even for a lowly 501c3 that's just starting off. And, you know, as a business, we've been around for 4 years now, 4 years. This will be our 4th annual music festival this year, with our first fundraiser happening next month. We're a lowly 501c3 itty bitty nonprofit company, and conflict of interest was a huge legal ordeal that our lawyer had to get involved with. And we asked lots of questions, and it was a big deal. So for someone who literally is going to be affecting billions of dollars in government contracts, maybe trillions, really, or over the long term, definitely trillions, is it okay that he has access into all of these people's bids, all this budget information? For those who don't know, when you bid for a government contract, the government has to accept bids from multiple vendors. There are certain rules and regulations in place based on, okay, we have all these bids. Can we accept this one from this company we really want to work with if this other one is 20% lower in price? And a lot of times the answer is no, you have to take the lowest price. As long as it's providing a reasonably close and equitable product that it's delivering to you, you have to take the lower bid. So previously, if Elon and 3 other countries, or SpaceX and 3 other companies are all bidding on a federal government or federal contract, they all make their best bids, and the government, they all make them blind. It's like a blind auction. And the government takes them all into a room and opens them up and says, okay, this company says they can do it for this, that company says for that, and SpaceX says for this. No one has information on what the other companies are offering. And so you have to just give your best price and what your best deliverables and what you can give. Now, Elon knows what other companies are offering. Now he can go undercut those bids by $1 million, whatever, however little itty bitty bid he needs to make that contract go through. And he can snipe all these contracts from his competitors with an unfair advantage. And the other little thing you don't know about government contracts, if the government says, to make the numbers easy, hey, Doug, I'm going to give you $1 billion to go ahead and build this podcast for me. What do you think? You want to sign this $1 billion contract? And Doug says, yeah, I'll sign that. I'll take that. That's my bid. It's the lowest bid share. And Doug signs a $1 billion contract to go ahead and do this podcast for the government. And then Doug gets a hold of them about 6 months later and says, hey, just so you know, things are actually much more expensive than I thought for this, and the costs are way up. I actually need another $50 million. The government's going to give it to you. They almost have to give it to you. And so your $1 billion government contract could easily turn into $1.8 billion. and it just grows and grows and grows and grows. So he could underbid. What we see a lot is people underbid these contracts because they get some inside information what their competitor has, but then they just raise it back up and ask for more money to the point that it was their original contract by the end anyway, and they wind up costing the government more money and essentially breaking the spirit of the laws that govern it. By the time all is said and done, Elon just gave himself the ultimate cheat code to do that. If two other companies are coming in at $100 million less than him, he can bid $150 million less and then just add on as he goes and still make an extra $100 million more than what they were making. And it's all legal. And he now has the playbook and all the information necessary to do it. So that, I think, is a huge issue here.
While I agree with you, to me, it's what are your other options, really? Allow me to explain. If you have someone who would potentially otherwise be involved in federal contracts and other government bids, you're going to have this issue no matter what. And you may even have this issue in more concealed ways or less obvious ways. You hire someone to handle all the federal contract bidding, and their sister-in-law or brother-in-law owns one of the companies that's constantly in the bidding. Or it's the, husband of your kid's teacher at school or something like that. That's a much harder connection to make and still potentially a very compromisable position, or even someone who just has a preference. And they will obviously know the relationship, whereas others might not. There might even be relationships that you can't go after that do compromise that. The other option is someone who is really, truly, completely removed from any and all connections. There's still the potential that person is able to be compromised.
Sure.
Just
There's
some sort of payoff or some sort of threat or whatever else. There's always that potential. This is very case specific, but a guy like Musk is, well, let's put it this way. He has a huge advantage and he could take advantage of it. He could. I'm not saying he wouldn't or never would or saying that it's not a danger, but literally the richest man in the world, you're going to try to bribe that guy? You're going to try to compromise that guy? The only person who can really compromise him, at least from a compensation perspective, is himself. So that's, in certain facets, about as safe as you can get. He's not going to disagree. He's not going to be he's never going to have any leverage against him, at least financially, that someone could take advantage of.
Because he has competition with other companies. Well, that's the leverage against him. This removes that competition.
Literally any other human being on the planet will have less wealth than he does, though.
Sure.
And the same or similar or worse leverage because of that. So yeah, you don't want someone to be involved if you don't have to, but at the same time, this is a guy who, if you're going to bribe anybody, at least financially, it's stupid to bribe the richest man in the world.
Well, yeah, but nobody's bribing him. No one's bribing him for this. He's putting himself in a position where he creates his own generation of wealth.
I'm not saying this is what will happen. I'm just explaining one way someone could be compromised in such a position.
Sure.
So, on a spectrum of here's ways to compromise somebody, Musk very, I think, poignantly has one way he would not be compromised, which is financial. You would have to evaluate him for other things like the federal contracts, but this is a pick your poison kind of situation. Somebody's got to do it, and that person either has connections that can be exploited, or that person has no connections and has other things that they can be exploited.
No, I disagree, though, because it's not that he has connections that can be exploited. It's that he has connections that allow him to exploit. It's very different.
Right. That's what I'm saying. He can be exploited even if it's by himself because of the temptations there or whatever else with the position.
I think you're just giving him the chance to make himself a ton more money with no competition, and you're removing the whole competitive aspect of capitalism that's supposed to exist. I think that's the problem there. I think what you do, I think you kind of hit it on the head.
That's a problem. Well,
Yeah, I
you
think.
don't put three hobos in charge and rotate them.
Well, no, but they don't have
Like,
to be hobos. You can go after people who have retired, maybe a little bit young, and are successful. You go find an accountant and a bunch of forensic accountants and investigators, and you have them do this same work. And then you employ counter espionage tactics to make sure that they're not doing insider trading and being bought out. We have all these things in place already. And you do that. And that seems very simple to me. None of them are going to profit billions. You pay them a fair government wage by making them, high up in this agency. And you avoid the perk of, oh, I can just set myself up for trillions of dollars over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So that's how you do that.
yeah, but now you run the risk of putting someone who does not understand the needs of the industry or the operations of the industry making very large governmental contract decisions.
But that's what we have right now with Elon Musk and Doge. If you look at the mistakes they're making, that's the same thing we're dealing with right now.
I understand.
So then what's the downside then? Because we're already dealing with that. So that's not anything new. That's not a new downside. That's exactly what Elon Musk is screwing up right now.
I think I would be great in a position like this because I'm honest, I'm trustworthy. I know that. Nobody else knows that. They just see some schmuck who works in like real estate who is suddenly deciding on federal contracts for other stuff. As far as the outside world is concerned, I'm very much compromisable, if only because I maybe don't know what I'm talking about, whether I actually do or not. And there's at least to me, I feel like having the richest man in the world, that does remove one way that he is potentially compromisable. I'm not giving him a pass, but
it's irrelevant if he can be compromised if he's just setting himself up with total control. If someone's in a position where they could be compromised, you set up counter espionage scenarios to deal with them and monitor them. And if they're compromised, you can them and they go to jail, and that's that. But instead, you're literally giving a guy a money press. The guy can make his own money.
Okay,
no one will ever outbid him. No one will ever underbid him again.
Here's my question, though. Why would the counter espionage not work on Musk, but would work on me?
Because he's not being exploited like that. He's not taking bribes from other people. He is simply setting up companies he already owns to get richer and richer forever and eliminate his competition. This is almost communist in the fact that he gets the government's permission to undercut all of his competition and remove his competition. That's very different from someone trying to bribe you for information.
But let me explain. If you put me in Musk's position over federal contracts in our hypothetical scenario,
sure.
And this is, let's make it super hypothetical.
Yes, this is super hypothetical, yes.
Yes. Let's pretend I have the same brains, drive, determination, whatever other facets you want to put on personality or psychologically. You make me roughly equivalent to Musk in that regard, except you keep his wealth and you keep my respective wealth. What is stopping me from being bribed by someone like Musk to eliminate his competition with my position over the federal contracts?
The team that I've got set up to monitor you using counter espionage tactics.
Thank you. Now, why can't that team just monitor Musk?
Because he's not getting bribed.
But why? Okay, but me being bribed is the only thing your counter espionage team can monitor?
Well, they can monitor other things, but with Musk, it doesn't matter because you're giving him full power. You don't have full power. You are not feeding your own company. You're not doing that sort of thing.
But that's my contention, is that I don't have full power. Therefore, I don't have that extra ulterior motive to look at. I don't have another company to feed. That would be an obvious, let's look at this.
Which makes you a better choice. Yes.
Okay, that's where we disagree, I think. That's what I was trying to get at. To me, I am more potentially compromisable because, at least to the outside world, I may be more influenced by money or wealth or whatever else.
And your focus on being compromisable, I think, is the issue here, because he doesn't have to be compromised. He doesn't have to. The whole point of this is he gets to write his own check. If he has all this information, he gets to write his own check. There's no one bribing him or extorting him or blackmailing him. There's simply someone saying, oh, all those contracts you were bidding for, here's a piece of paper that says you are guaranteed to get them. It's very different. He's printing his own money and defeating capitalism. He's not being compromised. He's not being exploited. He's the one doing the exploitation. He's the one being given the power to surpass all of the checks and balances that we have to ensure this sort of thing doesn't happen. We
And see-
literally have blind bids for a reason,
In my
and he no
scenario-
longer is held to that stipulation.
And in my scenario, someone like Musk is bribing me to then do all the same things that Musk would just do in the
Well,
position.
sure, but we can catch you with the counter espionage team. No one is bribing him for him to get caught. You can get caught. He can't. Literally, there are penalties in place for you that do not exist for him in this situation. In this scenario, there are things and penalties and crimes that exist over your head that actually do not exist for him. Period. They don't. Because we've made it perfectly legal for him to take all this information and operate his businesses with full knowledge of it. You have to commit a crime to get that information in his hands. He does not. That removes that entire aspect of this from the conversation.
Okay, that's fair. I'll give you that. That's a good point. That is an extra crime on the potential docket for me.
Yes. And that is what we can use to hold you accountable. And that is what we can use to punish you if you do something. And that is why you would do a better, more ethical job of this than someone who has literally nothing to lose and everything to gain.
I don't
You
know.
get a nice paycheck.
I just put this bribe somewhere else, and when I get out of jail, it's there for me.
Well, I hope you get out of jail in time to spend it.
You're right.
You'd probably
But
get a
see-
Trump pardon. You'd be all right.
This is exactly.
You could walk. You could march that Silk Road right out of
Hey, I was
prison.
going to say,
your
remember
Bahamas
Ross?
account.
Remember Ross? President Trump.
Yep, President Trump.
Yeah. Well, see, but that's, again, this is actually why, this is a perfect example of why I've always just said that government is a necessary evil, because we're sitting here being like, who's less corruptible? Not who would do a good job. If you assume completely that everybody's good-hearted, you start with
You're an idiot.
well, yes, but if you take the innocent until proven guilty like mindset and map it onto like people's motivations, then it actually makes sense to take the guy who's built up a bunch of companies into billion-dollar industries, who has a breadth of experience and information and access to people and information and other things. You want that person making informed decisions in a high-seated position. So if Musk is actually a good dude, he's the best man for a job like this.
Yeah.
If he's a good dude. But if he's not a good dude, he's very much not the best man for a job like this. And that's the gamble you have to take. I mean, but you're left with something that you can't really be sure of. And that was kind of, I wanted to delve into that to kind of see what you thought. And I mean, for me, I know I'm a good dude. I might become a less good dude if someone dropped me like 50 million to do something.
I'm not sure how, quote, good of a dude I am, but I will say that my integrity is
Your
not something
grandfather
that's for
was
sale.
was in organized crime. We can't trust you now.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair.
That apple's only fallen twice.
Yeah, that's fair.
What's interesting was I thought the way that the previous quote about how it was set up was really interesting, where he kept it in the executive branch. That was smart, because putting it in like the legislative branch or the judicial branch is freaking stupid. Too many fingers in the pie, too slow to react on things. What I
Good.
didn't
We can have another fight. Good.
Yeah. What I also didn't like about this initially was that this whole like plugging a team into each other department with the 4 employees, and these are very specific, like freak out kind of roles. There's, well, an engineer, most people aren't threatened by engineers most of the time, but then an HR kind of person, that's scary, because some random HR person can be like, you're a jackass, you're fired. And an attorney who can also just be like, you're a jackass, this is illegal, HR person, fire him. And then you have someone who's supposed to manage all of these personalities in every single department. To me, this was like, if you run a business or even just work for a company and you have any version of any influence whatsoever, and the IRS comes to you and says, hey, we'd like to just set up a little desk in the corner and just, have one of our people just sitting here, just working.
Keep an eye on things. Yeah.
They
This is
have
our
other
consultant, Bob. I want you to meet our consultant, Bob.
They have other stuff to do too, but they'll just keep an eye on you too. Just make sure we're sure you're doing fine. We just want to make sure we're making everything as efficient as possible for tax purposes. I mean,
This is where I want to put the Office Space thing in there, where they bring in the consultant, and he's like,
So
"I just
what
wanna
is
make
it that you
things are
do
going
here?"
more efficiently here?
yeah. So
We're just gonna be sitting back here having some interviews, talking to some people.
no big deal.
No
And
big
you
deal.
know, Bob,
might come into an accident. It wasn't my fault though. I'm completely honest, and I would totally control all the federal contracts perfectly fine. But fuck you, Bob.
As long as it's
So,
not Ricky
right.
from Lowe's or that feral
Ricky
cat
from
that
Lowe's.
wandered in and wouldn't leave.
But see, that's the thing is like this. This is that. This is, hey, we're just gonna check out what you're doing, but secretly we will fuck you up if we think that you're doing stuff wrong. But isn't that what's needed if the system is actually screwed up, at least in certain departments? Isn't that what you need, the proverbial wrecking ball, to get rid of the fat? And this is government. This is not private business, not really. So taking another government oversight committee and plugging them in, that already happens all the time. So is this really out of line? Like, it's new, and so people are freaking out about it. Nobody likes new. But my first thought was this is like plugging an IRS person into your business. And then my second thought was this is not a business though. This is the government. Thoughts?
I felt similarly at first, and I loved the spirit of Doge. I have seen for far too long firsthand how our government spends its money, and I know that it is not efficient, and I know that it is wasted in a lot of ways. And I was super excited to hear that someone's going to come in and clean that up because taxpayers are the ones that pay for that. And there's a lot of pork fat, a lot of crap that's in our spending that should not be there. We are paying to make people rich and not for what we think we're paying for in a lot of cases. So I love the spirit of Doge. I love what they said they were going to do. And here's my entire problem with Doge summed up in one very short sentence. It's all bullshit.
Wow, that's aggressive.
You say that we need this wrecking ball to come through, and honestly, I think I liken the image to that of Elon Musk. Was it a MAGA conference? MAGA, I guess MAGA. I don't know. MAGA.
I thought you were going to say Miley Cyrus for a second. I was
No.
going to. Okay.
Musk showed up at a MAGA conference this past week with like an actual chainsaw in his hands for like photo ops, and was like, "I'm cutting the fat off with a chainsaw," and that's the whole image they're trying to present is that they're just coming in and they're cutting all this waste out, and they're literally cutting so much out they need a chainsaw to do it because they're doing it so fast and so furious, and there's so much. But the problem is everything they're reporting is bullshit. And the things that they're reporting, they're going back and deleting them weeks later and going, whoops, that's a mistake. And there's mistakes in their math. And if everything was so transparent, you'd give us more information than you're giving us. They're giving us like one-line headers. We found 2.6 billion from this contract on studying trash can receptacles in Eastern New Guinea, and we cut it to save money. And that's all they're saying. And then when you go ahead and you look at the contract numbers that they accidentally posted and then deleted, the contract number is actually for like regenerative organ research at Duke University. And that's what that contract number ties to. So how does this have to do with your wastebasket management systems in Eastern New Guinea? And this has been happening over and over and over again, and the reports are piling up. Last week, they deleted $2.5 billion from their initial, accounting of savings claims. Whoops, we didn't actually save this $2.5 billion. They just deleted it. They didn't post and explain why. It's only because like Politico is watching this and NPR is watching this and organizations are watching this and they're tracking it every week. But they're going back and deleting things that a week ago they were celebrating, spiking a football. We just saved you $1 billion here, 250 million here, 170 million there. And then they go back and they delete them. And when you go research those contract numbers, it turns out they didn't actually cancel that contract, or that contract was already paid out and completed. So canceling it doesn't save you any money because it's already been paid and it's already done and it wasn't going to get renewed. They're taking contracts and they're listing them multiple times to show what should be a $25 million savings. They're listing it as $100 million because they're listing the same contract 4 different times. And their math is just accounting for these numbers all wrong, but they're only presenting the big inflated numbers to the public. They're only serving up these one-liners. They're not serving up any of the actual facts until they get called out by the press, until Politico does homework and researches it. And then when they get caught, they just delete it with no explanation and no apology. So we actually have no idea what they're saving. We actually have no idea what the right number is. And they're not being honest about it as they present the material. And that's why I say it's all bullshit. I love the spirit of this, but when you get down to the facts of the matter, it's all bullshit. And that's my biggest issue with this. It's all bullshit. We don't actually know what they're saving. The $2.5 billion one was huge in my mind. That was a big one. They just deleted it from their wall of receipts. Whoops, it's gone. Because someone finally looked at it and said, oh, that didn't actually happen. They said, oh, you're right. We'll delete it. How many of these things are not being caught? Good.
Once again, oh, you had the little tone in your voice that was like, fuck you, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to sip my rye. I saw you refill your glass. Go ahead. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I had the mic for long enough. I feel like I should turn it over.
No. I like this. Again, I'm wondering if this is just purely based on our basis, our starting points. I actually agree with you on all of this. I don't like seeing, hey, we saved this. Whoops, just kidding. We didn't actually save this, or we misreported something. This is going to sound super weird, super petty. The reason I don't like seeing that is because some of these news outlets, I should throw scare quotes around it, because there are very few true news outlets anymore, really. I mean, Everyone's always had an agenda, don't get me wrong. Like, even when people are impartially reporting news, sometimes there's some agenda there, like even just from an editor, not, they want to be a little bit harsher on something that conflicts with their viewpoint, even just from an editing perspective.
I think the Two Guys Talking podcast is one of the very few true news sources left in media.
Oh, screw that. I'm so opinionated. But
I tried.
I don't like seeing publications that I think are a pile of garbage actually getting a win and being like, right. No, you done messed up, Aaron.
And I feel like we've had like 12 years of exactly that nonstop, in my opinion.
And that's the thing, is that I don't like seeing it, because I like, moving forward and not backward. I don't like seeing people that I think are other garbage human beings actually getting, props and credit when they deserve it. That just annoys the piss out of me, because I'm a petty human being to begin with. But I think at my base, I've always kind of guessed that the government was some version of fucked up and malleable and compromised, and there's all sorts of money going every which place. And I also like the spirit of Doge. And to me, Doge really is a wrecking ball, except instead of having one person who's run that machine for decades, you have however many people, 100, 300 people, all, taking a test drive because, hey, this is kind of fun. You want to try one real quick? And then someone knocks out the building next door and goes, shit. And you got to repair that. But in my mind, if this actually can be a net positive, it's worth it. And I understand certain people are going to have, borderline ruinous things happen to them. It is a responsibility to have an infrastructure in place to mitigate those complaints or issues or whatever, and really seriously pour into them. The government behemoth is so massive and so messed up, and there's so much money going so many places that we also have no idea. You might have one name attached to a contract, but there's actually 5 names attached to it, because that's something that Congress passed through, and it has like 8 or 10 different things that are being funded from it. So when someone says, oh, this was like the, Duke Autism Foundation, like, yeah, it was also the like Albino Squirrel Foundation, right down the street too. Someone has to parse through that eventually and really make sure the money goes to the right spot. But if you just do that on the front end with every single thing, you really won't affect mass change. You really won't get stuff done. So I do think you have to kind of make a few mistakes along the way.
That's different from being dishonest.
But right,
and they're
correct.
being dishonest with a lot of their reporting.
Now,
and they're doing it for political favor.
I agree with you. I do not like that. There is a part of me that sits there and says, though, what's the alternative in today's world, in today's political climate?
Do it honestly with real forensic accountants and real transparent reporting. That's okay. That's the alternative. Do it the right way.
You, me, and the other 5% of the population. We love that.
I bet you more than 5% of the population would love that idea.
Okay, fine, 10%. Let's double it. Let's really go crazy.
You don't think the American people in general want fair reporting of how their money's been spent in a transparent way that they can understand and digest? You don't think that the majority of American people want the least amount of taxes possible, therefore want the government to spend the minimum that they can spend?
Yes to the first part, no to the second part.
Okay.
I'm gonna get. Oh, you know what? Oh my goodness, Tom, take a celebratory drink. You ready? Come on, let's do it. Let's cheers. I'll
Cheers.
explain in a second. Cheers. Ivory Tower Doug's about to come out. You
I
ready?
love Ivory Tower Doug.
There have been multiple.
Ivory Tower Doug is almost as good as someone saying, "Don't you know who I am?" Almost that good. Good.
There have been multiple studies on this. The one that I was more well versed in when I was reading about it, it was a study of all Americans, all between the ages of I think 25 and 55, and they were all white. So there's if
So
you
these
want
are your people.
these are my people. These are well. This was a study done, I think, in the early 2000s too. So a while ago. The reason I mentioned the white part is because there's not some sort of, with today's political climate, there's no race motivation here or anything like that. That study, it was an IQ study, and it more or less found that the top 5% of IQ, that is when you can ask someone how much it would cost to carpet a room. And that's the whole sentence. You give someone room measurements, you give someone a per yard or per cubic foot cost for carpet. Once you get to the bottom 95% of IQ, that person will not reliably, consistently be able to find the correct costs just to do work like that.
Okay. What percentage of people in the study were able to say, I want to spend more money to carpet the room, or I
Hold
want
on.
to spend less money?
I'm getting to that. Your top 20% of IQ were more or less white collar ish, professional ish kind of roles. Like that's where you get your accountants, your small business owners. Those roles are generally deemed a little bit, higher IQ worthy.
Your
And
podcast creators.
Sure.
Yeah.
Those people they are able to fact check and spot the mistakes of the top 5%, but they're not able to create or be the progenitor of the same ideas and concepts. They're your good workers for your company, but they're really not the ones coming up with any new ideas at all. They're not really any version of running society. And then the last part was at the very tippy top, 1% are the ones that actually advance society. But where I'm going with this is your middle 50%, that's what all the newspapers are geared towards. That's what all the movies are geared towards, or at least your mainstream movies are. That's what all the media is meant for. And the vast majority of the population is actually able to be more or less influenced by media because they just don't have the acuity to do some of these specific things. And another thing that came out of this with some of these factoids with IQ is that if you are in the top 20%, or excuse me, if you know how credit interest works, just you charge a credit card, you don't pay it off that month, and you understand how the interest works, you are now in the top 20% of the population for IQ, just by that alone. So I actually think the majority of people, they just want to see the wins. Yes, if you asked anybody, do you want to spend less money or more money? Yeah, of course everyone's going to say less money. But if you're going to talk about, do you care if the person saving you money is lying a little bit? Do you care if, do you care who's doing X, Y, or Z? I think most people don't care. I think they picked a team. They're entrenched on one side, and they just like good news for their team and bad news for the other team. And I think most of our political betters currently in Congress, currently in the executive branch, even some currently running around the judicial branch, I think they understand that. I think the entire charade is that people like us, honestly, again, to shout down from my ivory tower, people who are listening to this podcast and actually engage with it, there's a certain amount of honesty there. You want things to be done right. You want things to be done correctly because that's how it should be done. I think most of the population would say that and agree with that statement. But when it comes, when the cards are on the table, does it help my guy or does it hurt the bad guy? And that's what most people will respond to first. They will respond emotionally. And I think Doge and Trump understands that.
I disagree. I think people are selfish. I
Good.
think people care about their family and their interests and what they need to do. That's how people vote. What's best for me? What's best for my family? What's best for my career? But what I'm saying is you think that it's more about, my team. I don't think it's about my political team. I picked this side, I'm entrenched. I think it's about me and my family. I think it's a much more microcosmic thing. And I think that if
Oh, I
people
see. I got you. Okay.
I think if people could really take a look at this and see it in a clear and transparent way, they would say, that's crap. Don't do that. Or, yes, do more of that. The problem is we're not giving them anything like that. All we're giving them is, oh, we saved 2.5 billion. Oh, we saved 170 million. And they celebrate that and they dance for it. And they're like, oh, good. Look at all the money I'm saving as a taxpayer. I'm going to get that Trump taxpayer rebate check. That's going to be, $5,000 per household or whatever it is that he's offering, that they're pledging. And
Which
that's
is
all
stupid.
that they're seeing.
I hate that. I don't want that. But
I think I'm okay with it, but we'll talk about that later, I guess.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's all they're seeing. And they're seeing that again from this is going to help me. This is going to help my family. That's where they see this. When you give them that hope and you're giving them these numbers and they're all fake, I think if people realize that, they'd be pissed. I think if people get these checks, they're going to be for like $800, $1,200, because at the end of the day, they're reporting, a $65 billion total savings right now. And it looks a whole lot more like it's actually going to be like 10 billion, 12 billion. They're showing $655 million contracts that they're canceling from USAID for this project, but they're counting it 3 times. So it looks like 2 billion. And then when you go and you look at it and you get it right and you say, oh, you're actually charging this 3 times. And oh, by the way, we've already paid out a certain amount of this. They say they're saving $2 billion. What they're really saving is 18 million. So they're saving you less than 2% of what they're saying they're saving you over and over and over again. If people were more aware of that, I think people would be pissed. And they might have to be translated to that $5,000 check you think you're getting. Sorry, you're going to get 2% of that. Go ahead and do the math. Good luck, homie. Enjoy your $100 check, or your $10 check. That's what people are actually going to get. And I think if they realize that, they'd be pissed. So no, it's not about the team. In a lot of ways, America's about the team. It's that tribalism. This is my side. This is your side. But at the end of the day, what we all default to on the most primal level is that super microcosmic. My tribe is me and my family. Or if I'm single, it's me. And I do what's best for me if I'm single. And I do what's best for my kids and my wife if it's my family. But until those needs are met, that's my hierarchy of needs. Screw what Maslow says. My hierarchy of needs is, are my kids taken care of? Yes. Is my wife happy and taken care of? Yes. Okay, everything else above that, state, nation, God, that all comes after my kids are taken care of for most Americans. I really think that's the truth. And that's where we're going wrong with this. When everything gets boiled down and the curtain gets pulled aside and people see what's really happening here, I think people would be pissed. The problem is that curtain's not getting pulled aside because every time they make a mistake, they don't admit to it. They celebrate and say, oh, we saved you $2.5 billion, but they never go back and admit, oh, oops, it was actually like 20 million. They don't say that. And unless you're following the media outlets and the news outlets that are investigating this, you'll never know. That's the problem I have with Doge. It's all bullshit. They're not being honest. That is my biggest problem.
I would agree with you if we humans were not so good at pure rationalization, rationalizing our choices. You stated forever ago on one of our earlier episodes, I want to say it was in that first 10, it was one of our big tribalism talks. You talked about how people just don't have enough time to keep up with everything in the world. And so people pick.
I think that was episode 11. I think that was
something,
it was
something
11, yeah.
really, really far down there. But yeah, you said something to the effect of, which is true of, someone can't pay attention to everything. They can pay attention to international politics. They can pay attention to local businesses, local politics, even certain industries, but you can't just keep a tap on all of it.
Right.
So the vast majority of people, even ones who kind of care about, what's going on with Doge, they're going to be reading mostly headlines. And somewhere along the way, our, moral betters figured that out years ago. I do think some of that was figured out around the Trump versus Hillary thing, because Trump was a genius at exploiting that. And the anti-Trump crowd was also actually a genius at exploiting that, because people used to say things that Trump did that were completely false, and people just believed it and still believe it. I mean, there's still rumors floating around between both this Carmelo Anthony thing and the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, and they're being compared, and they're not comparable at all, even by the basic facts.
They're really not, and that's actually what we should talk about next week.
Yeah, we probably should, but and we'll get canceled again.
Yeah,
but
that's okay. We can be recanceled. It's fine.
Yeah, fine. It's all right. We already did it once. We've gone through this multiple times. But so part of what's best for me, and I'm talking just generic, human in America right now. Humans are very good at rationalizing. There's a zillion quotes that all have the same effect of, it's easier to deceive someone than it is to convince them that they've been deceived. And
True statement.
people don't like being wrong. So if you voted for Trump because he's the best, he's going to fix everything, then you see all these announcements from DOGE and you go, look, he's fixing everything. Even if someone smacks you in the face with, here's 10 things they actually fucked up on. Yep. Here's 5 things that they initially said they cut, but whoopsie, they found out they didn't because whatever. It is, in my mind, most people are likely to go with the thing of, well, at least they're still cutting stuff. They're still doing more than the other guys did. A lot of these people voted for, basically not Biden. You still have to convince these same people, hey, this DOGE team is doing 2% of what they promised they would do. The instant reaction is that's 2% more than what was being done before. And at some base level, I have to give credit to that, because if you asked me, would you have 2% better or 0% better? Of course, I'm going to pick 2% better. I might argue, I might want to know what the costs are to get there if it ends up being offset somewhere. Mm-hmm. And yes, I don't actually want my governing institutions to be running at such a low efficiency level when, ironically, the department is talking about efficiency. But you are going to have a massive, massive, massive uphill battle convincing anybody that's actually a mistake, unless you can demonstrably prove that they're actually a net negative. All they have to be is any version of a net positive, even just politically, to the people who selected Trump, and they've got it. They still got it. They're not going to let it go. And my actual biggest fear with DOGE is that they won't go away. My hope is that they take 4 years and cut a bunch of stuff to shreds, and through some version of necessity, people will self-correct and build it back up, and or they'll get sued and right some of those ships. And then I want them to go away, because this is, especially with their being fed into every other department in a team of 4 and more, that is a very massively compromisable weak point once you get away from potential original founders. If you have good people starting it and trying to run it and actually, having certain goals and visions in mind, it could work. The moment you get 1 and 2 iterations of others beyond that who are now vying for that role, you have a massive problem, and one that's already infected in the rest of the government. And that's my biggest fear, is that you're going to have, if you don't already have it, you're going to have worse actors who are now embedded in everything, and they'll just make it 5 times worse than it was before.
And this is why I love this podcast with you. This is why I don't think I could have done this podcast with just anybody, because I couldn't disagree with you more in a happier way, and it makes me so happy.
What, you think DOGE needs to exist forever?
Yes, I do. But Jesus. I think it needs to be done ethically and transparently. I think right now the way it's being done...
Okay, we'll just do a government thing ethically and transparently.
Sure, why not? Why shouldn't that be my standard? As a person who believes in doing things ethically, why can't I set that standard?
You can set that standard. I would ask you to review literally all of human history.
Sure, but we're talking about something being done as a clean sweep and something being changed and dramatic, a refacing of everything we know as politics and spending, right? So if I can imagine that you're going to change all this crap, if I'm supposed to buy that crap load, if I'm supposed to swallow that line like Bonnie Blue, then I can also go ahead and accept that we can put ethical people in place.
That was a mosh pit.
Well, sure, a mosh pit. It was a machine gun firing of things to swallow. If I can be asked to swallow 1,057 rounds of that, then I should also be expected to or allowed to expect that we're going to put someone in place with transparency and integrity, that we're going to operate ethically. Because otherwise, why should I believe anything else you're telling me? If I can't reimagine this the way I want, if I can't reimagine it's going to be better, then what's the point of reimagining it at all? So if you're telling me that DOGE is going to come in and it's going to eliminate wasteful spending and it's going to make things more efficient and it's going to save us money, reduce our debt, reduce our deficit, make everything more efficient going forward, well, one, if you don't have people in place to audit that and monitor that going forward, we're just going to end up back in the same exact place we've been because, like you said, human history. As soon as these restraints are gone, we're going to go right back to people making tons of money off of bullshit, and that's what's going to go. So what we need is an ethical and Department of Integrity and transparent operations to step in and manage this and make sure things stay efficient. That's what I should be able to expect. If we just take these people out of place when they're done, then the next president we bring in is going to go ahead and this shit's just going to happen all over again. And our wasteful spending is going to happen all over again. If we need DOGE in place to cut this and eliminate it, then common sense says removing them is going to reintroduce that problem. So no, we need DOGE. We need some form of this, but the version that we have right now is not correct. It's actually, I think, causing so far more damage than it's doing saving money. I look at the ways that government travel is affecting my job, and instead of having 2 government officials travel to Connecticut to attend like 7 or 8 meetings in one day and then fly back to DC, instead of doing that, which is pretty efficient, you're spending one day's work and a total of like 4 or 5 airline tickets, and that's what it's costing you to get through 8 meetings. Instead, you have to literally send about 16 or 18 people to DC on private shuttles with rental cars and then private shuttles back and pay them each 12-hour working days to give the same exact number of meetings. You're literally multiplying your cost on this by 18 to 20x the costs. We're not making anything more efficient right now. That's just kind of how it is. All right, I had to pause the recording because Doug had to go exercise his little pregnant woman bladder and go pee and go potty. So, as I used to do in the olden days, episodes like 1 through 20, when we have to pause our recording so Doug can take a wee-wee break, I'm going to go ahead and monologue a little bit. I love the idea of DOGE, okay? I really think that there is a need for it, and I think that there is a place for it, and I think that it serves the American people and the American government much better to have something like this in place if it is done ethically and with integrity. However, I do not feel that that's what is being done. And we're probably going to have to cut the podcast short here in a little bit because we've already been recording for over an hour and I have to wake up in 4 hours to go to work. So I don't think we're going to talk for a lot more when Doug gets back. But I will say this. The spirit of DOGE makes sense to me a lot. The way it's being done right now does not. And I think it's being done without any checks and balances. And I think it's causing a lot of damage to a lot of good people and a lot of good organizations. It's done some good. It has definitely cut some excess spending and it has definitely cut some fraud and some waste. But it's also damaging, I think, a lot of good people. And Doug is back from his pee-pee break. All right. So mid-rant, paused, resumed. We're good again. I feel like I should summarize and just say that Doug is a big, fat, stinky, poopy head, and we disagree on this. I agree with the spirit of DOGE.
We actually agree with a lot, though. Like for example, the situation you referenced. No, that's stupid. Someone needs to take the time, even though they normally wouldn't have to or shouldn't have to say, hey, no, dumbass, here's why this is less efficient. Here's why it potentially, depending on the situation, is actually worth a little bit of extra cost because it saves us a longer efficiency on the other end.
But that's the problem with giving this guy total power. There are no checks and balances. There's nothing to stop him from doing stuff like this where, like you said, he does not understand the government model. Yes. He understands the business model.
But with government, you have to be efficient, and being efficient means giving fewer people more power, though. You can't have too much red tape to be efficient.
To a point, yes, but there also comes a point where taking that sledgehammer chainsaw approach does more damage than good, which is what this
True.
is here. This
True.
reminds me a lot of people coming to me and saying, hey, I want a website. Can you build me a website? I want you to write search engine optimized copy. I want you to build it. I want you to host it if you offer hosting services. I want the total package, soup to nuts. Build me a website. Build me a brand. I want it. I hear you're good at this. Go ahead and do it. And I would say, sure. Let's have a talk. Let's see what you've got. And okay, this is what my graphic designer costs will be, is my web developer costs will be, is my copywriting costs will be, this is what implementation costs will be. This is where we're at. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. Well, let's say $2,000. Okay, it's going to cost you $2,000. And they would say, "Whoa, that's way more than I wanted to spend. Can you do it for like 500?"
You'd be
And I would
like,
say,
yeah, and you're gonna get.
well, no, I wouldn't even bother. Again, my work and my time have value, and I know that
Yeah.
value. And I'm at a minimum, that's what I'm paying my web developer at a minimum to build
Yeah.
the stuff I'm giving him. So I would say no. Sorry, it doesn't work for me. And they would say, well, fuck off then. And usually it was a very rude, oh, you're trying to price gouge me, blah, blah, blah. How is it you've helped people start small businesses with the prices this way? A lot of that would be said. And I'd be like, look, I'm sorry that my price doesn't match your budget, but I can give you recommendations if you want. And they say, no, I've got someone. And they would disappear. And then 2 to 3 months later, I would get a phone call or an email. Hey, Tom, I found a web developer who offered to build me a website for $350, and I went with them. But it turns out it's not secure, and it got hacked, and they didn't use the right images, and it wasn't search engine optimized, and it crashed all the time, and they wouldn't support me unless I paid them another $150 an hour, and blah, 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 blah. And my website wasn't done right, and now it's cost me $1,500, and I don't have anything I can use. Could we maybe do this right with you? And I would say, sure. My price is still $2,000. And I say, well, I've already
Maybe
spent
even more now
1,500.
if you have to fix stuff.
Right. Well, we'd build
Yeah.
it from scratch.
Well,
And they
yeah,
would say,
but-
well, I've already spent 1,500. I'm like, well, not with me. Like you gave that to someone else after I told you what my price was. You could have spent $2,000 total. Now it looks like you're probably going to spend 3,500. Like that's just where this is going to go. And they would fuss. I already spent so much money on this. I'm like, right, but you spent it with someone else and you bought the cheapest thing and you did what was best for you in the moment without looking forward down the road and without caring about what this would look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years ago. Instead of taking that long-term approach, you went with who can build me a website right now, and it wound up costing you a ton of money, and it's now going to cost you more. And they would go, they would hem and haw, and they would disappear again. And they would go find another website developer who would do it for $750 or $1,000. And then they would, sure enough, come back to me, hey, can you just take what they built and fix it and make it better? And I would look at the website and say, no, I can't. This is crap. It's not secure. The website is awful. I have to rewrite all the content and all the copy. The images aren't optimized. It's not accessible. Like you're not compliant with any of the laws that require you have to be accessibility compliant. Like this is a bad website. To fix this and rework it and just change it would actually take me longer than to build you a brand new, correct, compliant website. So no, I'm not going to do that. And then they would hem and haw. And then guess what? They would pay me $2,000 to build their new website. And at the end of the day, a $2,000 website, if it was done correctly the first time, winds up costing them like $4,500. Because they did what was best in the moment and what looked good and what they thought was going to save them money without looking down the road the right way. That's what Doge is doing right now. Doge is that cheap ass, we're going to save this money right now because it makes it sexy, makes it look good. And then look at what it's already costing down the road. Look at the errors that are already being made, the mistakes that are already being made. What's this going to look like a year, 2 years, 5 years from now? How much money do we have to spend in fixing things and re-implementing things and getting contracts back in place? I don't believe that the way that they're doing this right now is actually going to save us money. I just don't.
Okay, well, never mind. I had a question that I thought I knew the answer to, but I already. So to acknowledge your analogy, in your analogy, your person who just won't learn. That's just who that person is. You're not going to change that person. The only person who can change that person is them. The question I was going to ask was, do you think there's any chance, non-zero, like 0.5% chance, that there is actually some longer term plan with Doge of where they are admittedly sledgehammering and wrecking balling? Never said that before in my life. Well, now we know what that sounds like. Anything that even smells bad at first, and they just know that they will eventually come around and build it back up. But because we live in a political world with a bunch of people that are just all about rationalization, they're also trying to build up their political capital at the same time.
No, because if that
Yeah,
was
see, I
the
already knew
case,
that. I already knew that answer.
I don't think they would go through all the effort of hiding their mistakes. I think they would be upfront and say, this is what we think this is what we're doing. This is where we think it's going to go. We acknowledge there are going to be some stumbles along the way, but the greater good will be accomplished because after we've got a year's worth of data, 2 years worth of data, whatever, we are going to have refined a system to put in place that will set an exemplar system for America that will keep your budget efficient and cleaner and benefit the taxpayer. They would say something. It's an easy, you already won political favor. You can't lose it for 3 more years, 3.5 more years. They don't need to play that game yet. Those are the games you play the last 2 years of a presidency, not the first two. So if they believe that was the case, then they wouldn't be working so hard to hide these mistakes and to cheat the system in the first place. They are literally cheating right now when they're tripling and quadrupling things, hoping no one catches it, and then whoops, just deleting it when they get caught.
Technically,
So, no.
Musk said, and I read it earlier, we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we will fix the mistakes very quickly. That was the quote. Now, hiding the mistakes, if they are actually mistakes, someone could argue is correcting the record. And of course, you're not going to spend a bunch of time talking about all the bad stuff you did because you guys still keep doing good stuff.
Then stop telling me you're being transparent.
I'm devil's advocate here.
Sure, but I'm just saying, stop telling me that you're being transparent because that is a huge part of this platform is that we are being transparent. We're letting you see what we do. We're creating our wall of receipts and putting it up on X. Stop telling me that you're being super honest and thorough if you're not being super honest and thorough. That's super easy.
Yeah, I don't know. If I'm running a department that's supposed to slash the shit out of everything that's gotten way too big, do I basically literally pay somebody extra to document or broadcast our mistakes and our corrections? Like,
isn't it
yes,
better to get out in front of those than to let your enemy catch it and be the first person to announce it and make it public?
So for people like for people in the middle ground, the moderate, the people who really want integrity along with their processes, yes, that makes sense. But I do think at some level, not that that's a minority, but that it's just it's not as efficient. I think people are like every hot button issue we've ever talked about. People are kind of dug in on one side or another, and sometimes they dig in right away, sometimes they dig in a little bit later. But once they dig in, they're there.
It's more efficient to say that you made a mistake than it is to try and cover it up, have someone uncover it, and then deal with what happens after the fact. That's simple math. That is really simple math.
Yes, again, I think there are much fewer moderates.
It doesn't matter if you're moderate. This is math. It's fewer steps. It's less energy. It's less money and time expended. Therefore, it's more efficient.
If 40% of the population is going to be on Trump/Doge's side, almost no matter what, outside of them like shooting people in broad daylight, like on the street, and then you have 40 people who are going to be against them pretty much no matter what. Even if they give candy to a baby, they'll be like, oh well, they're trying to poison the baby, like
promoting diabetes, right?
You're right, exactly. You have this nice little 20% of people that do shift the vote and do help change power from time to time based on what's actually happened. The natural thing is to say, yes, win over those 20%.
Sure. How do you win them over?
But the other thing, the other, in my mind, natural reaction is to say, well, we've already got 40% of people on our side. And at least some of that middle 20% are going to look at this and say, yeah, they're not doing so well, but it's still better than the other guy. They're saving some things, and the other guy saved nothing. They're making a calculus. They're making a calculated decision that may or may not be correct.
Sure, and that's fine, except that when part of the information,
they just got to get half of those people, to say, well, it's better than it was before.
But see, that whole argument falls apart when literally, and I have to find it now, one of the programs that you're talking about is something that was canceled by the guy before and not you. And your mistake was to report that you canceled it when it turns out it was one of the few things that old Joe did right, and his people actually canceled it.
Okay, so now we only have 5% of the moderates on our side, but we'll do a couple more things and get the 7 or 8% back and swing it. Like it, and the other thing too that we haven't even talked about here is we are dealing with, I mean, if I may, Tom, you're a very proud human being.
I'm not proud.
Yes, you are. Look
I'm
at
really
you.
not.
Look at you.
I think that pride is the enemy of progress. I am not a
Okay,
proud
fine.
person.
Arrogant.
I am a little bit arrogant. That's fair.
Well,
I'd say it's closer to conceited, but arrogant is probably
okay,
out
fine.
there.
At this level, and you know, we're just talking about Doge, Trump, etc. I mean, you talk about Congress and everything else also. We are dealing with enormously massive egos here too.
Yes.
These are people who think they're right and can never be wrong. And these are also people who, even when they realize they're wrong, they find some way to say, screw it, I'm still better than these other people anyway. We are dealing with a different level of rationalization here. We're trying to rationalize based on our level, and that's probably not even correct. The most tyrannical thing I would ever say in relation to Doge is that one of the other potential issues with it is that our presidential / executive terms are only 4 years. The government baby has gotten so fat and so well fed that I think a true proper fix would take much longer than 4 years.
I agree.
And that's all Trump's got. So if they actually have a long-term plan, excuse me, they are looking for probably JD Vance to come up and take 2 more terms to actually accomplish some longer-term goals. That's got to be their play. Otherwise, if they're just doing this to run amok, then they've only got 4 years, which would explain some of the behavior. So I'm still in the camp of it's probably going to be a net positive because they're making lots of mistakes, but these are also things that just never were ever going to happen under Biden and other regimes. I mean, hell.
Except that they were happening. Like,
But
as much as I hate Joe Biden, as much as I believe he is the worst president to sit in the Oval Office in my lifetime, a bunch of these contracts were actually canceled under him, and they're claiming credit for it. And then people uncover it and say, oh, no, that contract was not canceled by you. It was actually canceled by Biden, and they just delete it. Like, oh, we'll just take that receipt off the wall then. You're getting uncovered. You're making the previous president look better because I thought he did absolutely nothing in office. And now, because you're falsely listing things, I am learning that, oh, he actually did some of this stuff already. It's defeating the purpose. You're achieving the opposite. People are not as stupid as politicians make us out to be. Yes, I think people are generally stupid.
Yes, we are.
I believe people are generally stupid. I do. I really have come to believe
Politics is the one thing that can make smart people incredibly stupid.
Oh, no, there are lots of things that can make smart people stupid. Money, sex, power, sports. There are lots of things that can make people stupid.
I didn't say politics was.
You just said it was the only thing. That's
Okay,
exactly
you're right,
what you said. Those were your exact
now
words.
here's the part where I rationalize that money, sex, and power is all some version of politics because it's how you present yourself to the world.
Sure.
Boom, nailed it. So I, for one, am still willing to let this experiment run. I didn't have like high hopes for it or anything.
I did. See, I did. That's the problem.
Maybe that's it. I've always looked at it as kind of like, let's just see what they do. I at least like the idea that someone's at least pretending to do this. And maybe even a fake it till you make it makes us a little better off than before. I don't know, though. For me, my true metric, my true barometer for are things improving is, and it'll never happen, which is, why this will never happen. But if Congress is suddenly not allowed to be part of stock market trading.
Oh, I would love that. Yep.
That is such we talk about conflict of interest. We're all worried about Elon Musk and his conflict of interest. The mere fact that any congressperson can be involved in stocks and trading is ludicrous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so obvious. So if they ever said no, actually no direct kin or next of kin or Congress people can be involved. I mean, fuck, you can buy if you're like the nephew of someone who works for like a state lottery, you can't buy a lotto ticket. But
someone like Nancy Pelosi's husband, or what was the other dude? It was the Republican. I can't remember his name right now.
I feel like Nancy Pelosi and her husband is like the prime example of this because you have like hedge market companies that literally follow him and just do what he does.
I would say there are people that have set up algorithms to just tell you here's what Nancy and Paul Pelosi traded. Do
Yep.
it. Like just
Yep.
follow them verbatim.
And it makes you tons of money.
Yeah, and just it's just so hilarious that these people can do any of that when you have rules even for state level governments of like you can't have breathed on somebody who works for the Ohio lottery in the last 2 weeks and even buy a ticket for any reason. So if that ever somehow becomes a thing, I'll actually believe things are improving. Until then, it's some version of a game. All the world's a stage. In my mind. And this is another part of it. We just might be getting to an act that I actually like a little bit more. That's kind of my take on it.
And my take on it is that it's bullshit. They're throwing,
and they're getting rid of the CFPB. Yes, thank you. Fuck those people. Hate those fucking people.
Great. Wonderful. That's exciting.
And we might lose one listener for that because of what the CFPB says they do, but fuck those people. As someone who was at Chase in the middle of the first CFPB audit when they first got formed, listening to these people on the phone, listening to them talk to our branch employees. You want to talk about people that have no fucking idea what they're doing? It's those people. Fuck those people. Hate those people. But I'm sure they have families and kids and, all that. And so, I don't actually want anything bad to happen to them, but that department did not need to exist. So glad it's gone.
And see, here's my biggest problem, like I said, is that I think it's bullshit. I think that they're giving us fake numbers that are easily checked and easily found to be fraudulent. I think their last number was like $9.6 billion in savings. And within like a day and a half, that was debunked and shown to be more like, 4 billion, maybe between 4 and 6 billion. So they're lying about that number by a huge amount. And even if they are finding $9.6 billion right now in waste, like even if that number is correct and it's attributable to them and that number pans out to be right, they said they were going to find $1 trillion in wasteful spending and fraud. And they're nowhere near close to that. And what they've cut so far in this amount of money is literally less than 1% of what the federal government spent last year. So all this fuss and all these shenanigans for less than 1% cost, you're affecting all these people and you're saving us less than 1%. You're literally upending and destroying business models that we're going to have to rebuild for less than 1% savings. That doesn't seem right. And then to make things even worse, the GOP had a framework on, was it last night? Maybe it was the night before, where they proposed a $4 trillion cut or a $2 trillion cut. And if we could just get bipartisan agreement, that would save us more money than what DOGE is doing. If we could just teach our government to work together. Well, I know, but is this going to really save us any money anyway? If it's less than 1% now, and it's like my website model, which I think is what it is, I think in the end, to rebuild things and fix the things that are being done, it's going to cost us way more. Then this is saving us 0%. It's actually going to cost us money. And while you're doing that, you're giving the wealthiest person in America, or one of the 2 or 3, unlimited edge for all of his future endeavors in government bids. So not only are you saving less than 1%, but now you're giving someone free market reign to charge whatever he wants for any government contract over at least the near future. Is that worth less than 1% in savings? Is that in the spirit of what we were told DOGE was? Is that making us more efficient? Is that cutting back on our deficit? Is that going to make lives better for Joe taxpayer? The answer is no. So they're failing on delivering on what they promised us DOGE would be. That's my bottom line.
Well, okay, fair. I think we're also underestimating these numbers again. It's very easy to sit there and say, oh, they've only saved 1% of the budget, so what's the point? But we're talking about trillions of dollars here.
We're
and
not.
I know, no, the budget.
Yes.
We're talking about trillions of dollars, which, again, these are fake numbers. Nobody actually can wrap their head around these numbers. So to me, saving 1% plus the potential interest off of that, no, it's not enough. But
there's no interest. That's what you don't understand about government contracts. There's no interest on this. When they say that they're cutting an $18 million contract with someone, that's not saving $18 million over the course of the next X years like it's an annual thing. That's a 1 year or certain years, that's not guaranteed to be paid out. That's not something they're going to save us every year. And they're forecasting it as though it is. There are lots of government contracts that are written for, say, $1 million that only wind up paying out $300,000.
Okay.
But they're not coming.
There is nothing as more permanent than a temporary government program, is the one quote. And then the other quote is, okay, the $1 million contract gets canceled. It would have only paid out 400,000. That's still 400,000 that didn't get paid out. And
yes, except that we can't trust the numbers they're giving us. There was a $25 million Department of Agriculture number that they actually quadrupled, and it turns out most of that has already been paid out. So they said they saved $100 million, but it turns out that really it was a $25 million contract, and $23 million had already been saved. So they saved us $2 million, but they claimed $100 million.
Okay. Before DOGE, before Trump's current term, could we have trusted any of the other numbers before?
I would have said no. But now, because of DOGE, I'm learning that Biden cut a lot of these contracts. So they're actually making me
DOGE
believe more in the previous government. I don't know. But the thing is, we can't trust the numbers they're giving us, so it doesn't matter. It's all bullshit.
We couldn't trust the numbers before.
There were no numbers before, Douglas. There were none.
The Pentagon failed audits for like 9. They failed all previous 7 or 9 audits, even before all this too. There was money that just they couldn't account for. Billions of dollars they couldn't account for. Again, I am not sitting here saying DOGE is like the greatest thing since sliced bread. I am saying, though, we had to do something, and this is a start. And if it ends up being a net negative, great. But the previous way was not working. And everyone likes to act like we'll just print more money or trade more goods or swap debt around, and the debt's an actual fake number, and we'll just keep raising the debt ceiling. At some point, it is going to fuck us in the ass if we don't change something. I mean, Greece had a real shit show for 5 to 10 years there.
Agreed. And I agree with everything you just said, except that DOGE is giving us a better alternative. I don't agree with that.
Well, I don't want to be the douche that says this, but I'm going to say it. What's your solution?
Put someone with fucking integrity in that office. I've said my solution.
Who?
Go find a retired accountant who's familiar with government systems and set up counter-espionage tactics and give them a team of forensic analysts and accountants and have them do this. I've said this 4 times tonight.
Okay,
4.
And that's how many people is that going to take?
That would probably take you one person in charge with your counter-espionage team in place, and then however many people it takes to audit individual organizations. That's what it would take you.
Okay, so 50?
Sure, let's say 100. Let's say 100 people.
Okay.
Easy number.
And you feel like you feel confident that you can find 100 people that have no relationships, who have previous government experience, government familiarity, who have no current relationships, familial or otherwise, that could even look like a potential conflict of interest.
Okay, so yes, because you're taking them accountants from government organizations. These people are not necessarily talking to big corporations. They're not talking to people with stock interests. You're talking about basic accountants and forensic analysts. Literally people from police departments who do this sort of thing for detectives for a living. They're not hanging out with Fortune 500 bigwigs. Yes, this is not a hard thing to find. In a country of however many people we have, it's not hard to find 100 people who could fit that role.
I think but now you're finding people who have other connections to other people in the government who might have reasons to not cut certain programs or look the other way with certain other things. So you don't assign them to
those programs. There are plenty of programs. You can assign them somewhere else.
So now you're partitioning your program out to certain people only have access to certain programs.
Yes. How do you not compartmentalize a team like this? That's a part of operating efficiency.
Well, that's what DOGE did. They compartmentalized. They took teams of at least 4 and plugged them into each department. And those
they did not screen people for interest. And you can't say they did when the guy in charge has a vested interest in government contracts.
But he's
when
only
the guy in charge has the most significant defense spending budget contract. I can't even talk. You're getting me so mad right now. This is the dumbest argument we've ever had.
No, it's not.
The guy in charge gained gains more from this than any human being has ever gained from a government appointment in the history of our country, ever. And I was in Iraq when we blew that shit up, and all of Bush and Cheney's friends owned the companies that came in and rebuilt it. So for me to say that is a hell of a thing, because the whole reason I hate Bush is that I watched his buddies come in and rebuild that country and make billions of dollars off of what we did. So for me to say that Musk has the single most capital gain out of any American in history by his appointed government position, that's a statement that comes from a little bit more than the surface of my brain. This is bullshit in that regard.
So the Alabama IVF was probably our stupidest argument that we've ever actually had.
I disagree. This is dumber. This is dumber than your whole atheists have to be evil people because God's not giving them morality argument.
I didn't say that. I said
go listen to that episode again.
I said atheists should be sociopaths. Otherwise, they're not doing it right.
Equally stupid. I'm sorry.
No, they're stupid because they have so much more potential.
It is not hard to find basic blue-collar, civil servant, retired government employees who are serving as accountants, forensic accountants, and have them say, go through these books. See if you can find something that doesn't make sense. See if you can find things that are wasteful. See if you can find Social Security payments to people that are 175 years old. You do not need someone who has a vested interest in defense spending to do that job. You don't.
But I think that when you're talking about $36 trillion, it's easy to say 5 or 10 things to look at. I think in reality, there's 10,000 things to look at.
Sure. I'm not saying you do it overnight. You've got 4 years.
That sounds like a lot. I don't think that's a lot of time. When it gets right down to how long certain projects take. When you're looking at contracts that are $150 or $655 million at a pop, that happens real quick. You start with the big ones and you work your way down. It's not that hard. It's doable. Two times that is 1 billion. And then 1,000 times that is 1 trillion. And then 36 times that is our current deficit.
I'm not saying you solved the whole deficit.
72,000 of those contracts.
DOGE never said they were going to eliminate the entire deficit. Now you're just making worse than straw man arguments because no one ever said that was the goal. The goal was said to be $1 trillion. That's what he said.
I am demonstrating. Okay, so if you looked at $500 million contracts up to $1 trillion, then double that. One of those contracts is 1 billion, and then 1,000 of that is 1 trillion. So if you were only looking at $500 million contracts to cancel, you would have to look at I can't do math right now. 20,000, 2,000.
2,000, I think.
2,000.
But I'm also a couple glasses in, so my math might be off.
I was going to say, it's fine. Just ask me to run for it. I can't do basic
So you're looking at 2,000 contracts. If you have a team of 100 people, okay.
Then that's one person for every 20 contracts or so. That on its face sounds reasonable. What if at least half of those are legitimate? What if some of those require certain top secret clearances or other things like that require certain paperwork or approvals or interview? You can go really deep in the weeds of researching contracts for months at a time to see if they're truly viable or needed or whatever.
And I think you would have to. But you know what? That way you're doing it right. And the way they're doing it now is not doing it right.
Yes, I agree with you. But then you need someone with a Musk level type of influence that has the oversight to make the call.
No, you don't.
These 100 people analyzing stuff have to take facts, and you're going to be operating in a lot of gray, I think. And you're going to need someone to make the call, or someone with the decision-making authority that it can fall on, or unless you're going to put all of the weight on each of these 100-ish analysts doing each of these individual contracts, right? You don't have anyone signing off on that analyst's work? Nothing?
Sure you do. Of course you have lines of quality control. Yes.
So, but who's that person or those people?
It's not someone who has a vested interest in Department of Defense spending, Doug. You're missing the biggest picture here, and it's really blowing my mind. It's not someone who stands to gain literally billions to trillions off of making these decisions. That's who it's not. Okay?
I can agree with that, but at the same time...
you aren't.
Well, but see, and here's why I'm not. To me, someone like myself.
I wish we lived closer so we could just go to a bar and have this conversation and like
What, and then get kicked out?
probably, but man, that would be fun. Okay, go ahead.
I know it would be. But so here's my thing. To me, someone like me would be a good candidate for something like that because I don't have any actual ties to the government other than like I pay the IRS taxes every year. I mean, your current job, I might argue, makes you less of a viable candidate because
Sure.
you at least have some right. But
I agree.
But I would be the first person.
But
to
I'm
be
not a
like,
forensic accountant.
well, okay, I can be too. I just need to call myself that. I'm a trans.
No,
I'm
that takes training and certifications. No, you can't just call yourself a forensic accountant.
Tom, I
That's
have it
not how
on
it
good
works.
authority that I can change my gender whenever I want. So I can
That's
be a
not the same thing.
I can be a
Douglas.
trans forensic accountant. But
You identify as a forensic.
I identify as it. Yeah. So, but so, yeah, I'm completely removed. I come in with a total blank slate. I don't have any preconceived notions. I get to just judge everything based on its merits and based on the experts who are reviewing this for me. I can craft this in a way that makes me sound great. I would be the first person to tell you that I should be nowhere fucking near any of these sign-offs anywhere. And just, someone's got to make the call somewhere, and you're always going to have a problem with that person.
So let's just make it a person who stands the most to gain in American history from getting this information from Department of Defense spending contracts. Let's just make it the guy who stands the most to gain ever. Let's just do that. That's fine.
I will. You accuse me of worse than strawman arguments. I think it's a stretch to guarantee that Musk is the most to gain ever. He's already the richest man in the world. How could he gain more if he's already the richest man in the world?
Because he can take the money away from Lockheed Martin Marietta, from Douglas Adams, from General Dynamics, there's still so much money in defense spending out there that he doesn't have that he can get. That's how. Since when has someone who's wealthy not wanted to make more money? When has that ever been the case?
Oh, I'm not agreeing with that. Now, I would like to point out, because I've never officially said this before, and this is perhaps my fault. I don't actually think Musk is probably the best guy for this. I understand why he got the position.
Sure.
But almost whoever you put in this role, I could just guarantee there's probably someone better because the math just says so. You have however many 300 million people in the U.S., there's probably going to be someone better than whoever you pick.
No, this is the dumbest argument ever.
No, it's not.
This is back to, well, that person's worse, so it's okay that this person's okay. You know what?
No,
you know
I
what?
didn't say that.
There was someone worse in our
that.
history than Hitler at some point.
I didn't say that. Yeah.
So I guess Hitler's okay because I'm sure there was someone worse than him. Technically, Genghis Khan killed more people than Hitler, so I guess Hitler's okay. He might as well be the ruler of Germany because Genghis Khan would have been worse. There's someone worse.
I'll do you one better. It's literally concurrent in history. I think Stalin was worse than Hitler.
You're making my point.
Mm-hmm.
Your argument is foolish. Just because there is someone better or someone worse does not serve as evidence that this person is the right choice for that job. You know what the best thing that Hitler ever did? You know the one thing you have to give Hitler credit for?
I feel like this is the best time to shush you right now.
It might be, but do you know what the best thing he ever did that you have to give him credit for is?
He championed the arts.
No, he killed Hitler. That's the best thing you can say about Hitler is that he killed Hitler.
Oh,
That's
no,
it.
there's conspiracy theories out there now.
I know,
like,
and we should
did
cover
he?
that. I actually want to do a conspiracy episode soon because I've
There's
got some
that picture in like whatever Austria of some dude where they're like, oh.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in South America somewhere, still alive. That's what I hear.
Oh, that'd be.
I cannot. This really does go back to me to the atheist episode, where I cannot understand why you have dug in so deeply on this for something that seems so simply logical to me.
You want to know why you can't understand it? It's because I haven't dug in so deeply on this. We are starting from different points. You are assuming that I am saying this department might be a net positive, therefore everything about it is approved by me, including Musk running it.
No, that's not what I think you're saying.
Okay, then tell me what I'm saying.
You're saying that the department might be a net positive, and then you're defending Musk's position in charge of it. That's what you've been saying so far.
I am saying that this department might be a net positive, and we should give Musk, at least initially, a shot because you could find holes to poke in anybody you put in that position. Me personally, I do not believe he's the best person for that position. I have had my reservations about Musk for a long time because he goes right down to video gaming online profiles that are supposedly ranked in the top worldwide stuff. And there's no way the dude can run as many companies as he can, no matter how talented he could possibly be, and also manage something like that. And you know what? Here comes my arrogance. I know that because of all the shit that I'm spreading myself around with right now.
Yep.
I work my ass off 95% of my day from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. And the only time I'm not working my ass off is when I'm spending time with my family and my kids, which I try to do more time with. And that is harder work sometimes than any of the other work I do. And I'm only running like 3.5 things. This dude claims to be running 5.5 things. And even if he's genius, the smartest person to ever exist, he literally is constrained by time. He cannot honestly believe that he is doing his true due diligence on any of his businesses unless he spends at least 5 hours per week on any of them. And that's if he has the most ideal possible processes in place for his own review. And then he has time to build up these gaming profiles where he's like top 5 or 10 in the world, which requires literally like 20 hours a day of constant gameplay of some kind with account sharing. There's no way. And he also has 9 kids who have weird ass names with a bunch of different women who he's somehow supposedly talking with every so often or doing child support payments to. There's no way he can possibly handle all this purely because of time. The alternative is that he's figured out a way to clone himself legitimately, and there's actually 3 of them, and one of them, their job is just to make sure no 2 of them are ever showing up at the same time.
I think the alternative is that
that's
he
what
delegates.
we're talking about here.
I think it's as simple as he delegates. He owns the companies and he's technically in charge, but he's got good leadership underneath him and he delegates well.
Okay, great. He's the world's best delegator.
Sure, it doesn't take much.
The world's best hiring managers are right, air quotes, depends on the metric you use, 75 to 80% of the time.
Sure.
There is zero chance that he's going to do everything right. And this position, whether it's paid or not, is just another thing on his plate. So no, he's not the best guy to do it. You need to find that person who does one thing at a time supremely well, and they've proven it publicly. And those people are few and far between, especially ones that don't have any ties anywhere. I don't actually know who that person is. But no, I don't think Musk was the best person for this at all, in any way, shape, or form. But I'm at least excited to see someone even, like I said, pretending that they're going to try to fix it. Let me dream a little.
I think people have been pretending to fix it my entire lifetime, and that's what got us where we are. Because they
People have
pretend
been
to fix it.
People have been saying that
Yes.
they'll fix it, but
Yes.
now they're pulling receipts back off the board, but at least they're putting some up there.
Sure, but they're putting up fake ones.
It's fine.
This
Don't
is
worry
like
about
the,
it, Tom.
Oh
You're
my
destroying my
god!
dream.
So you would rather be lied to and have them feed you bullshit and tell you it's brownies? You would prefer that.
I
and
have
that blows
been
my
being
mind.
lied to and fed bullshit my whole life.
Okay, this is the analogy of the bros before hoes. Have you ever heard the bros before hoes comparison analogy?
No, not at all. I've never
Okay.
watched How I Met Your Mother with the bro code.
No.
I've
This is a very specific thing. Okay.
Then
So a woman doesn't come home one night. Okay. She just doesn't come home. The next night, she tells her husband she slept over at a girlfriend's house.
Mm-hmm.
The husband calls her 10 best friends. Not one of them says they know anything about it. Must have been someone else's house. Okay. That's how that one goes down. A man doesn't come home one night. The next day, he tells his wife he slept over at a friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
So she, like he did, calls his 10 best friends and asks each of them, did he spend the night at your house last night?
Yeah, and 8 of them be like, "Oh yeah, he was over here. We had a great time."
8 of them say, yep, he was here. He spent the night. And the other 2 say, yeah, he's still here. I think he's sleeping in. Okay. You would prefer that scenario is what you're telling me than the honesty of everyone being like, no, I have no idea what's going on. That's what you're telling me.
No, because I claim that I've been lied to and deceived my whole life, and that I may still be being deceived right now. That doesn't mean I like it.
You just said you did. Oh, Douglas, I love you, and I love arguing with you.
No. Listen.
This has been
Listen.
2 hours of circling around. We need to get past this and get to dad jokes if we're going to tell dad jokes. Because I
Actually,
now have to be
that's
awake
true, we
in
do.
3.5 hours.
Your bros before hose analogy is all talk. People saying things that they think you want to hear.
And that's what he's giving you is all talk.
What I am saying is that I have been given all talk from our moral and superior political betters my entire life. Now, at least they're trying to put up a front of actually doing something with the talk, whether it's right or not. There is a small part of me that really hopes that they're actually doing something. But me, in my own little self, I have no way to actually verify that. I've watched people like Nancy Pelosi and Mitt Romney and George Bush get up to the microphone and say what they're going to do and what they've done.
And instead of them saying it and doing nothing, you would rather have someone go in there and lie to you and do the wrong thing and hurt people. You would rather have someone take harmful actions than to take no actions at all, is what you're telling me.
That is really watering down and overly simplifying my point.
But is it accurate? Because that's how it feels.
No, that's not accurate. What I am saying is that rather than having someone just tell me they're going to fix stuff and doing nothing, I want to see someone actually saying they're going to fix something and doing something. I don't want people to get harmed or hurt, but I know the previous system, the previous modus operandi is not working. So something needs to change. And if I'm not going to be the one to change it, then I at least want to see something different. Change is at least the potential for good. It's also the potential for bad. It is the potential for worse, and I acknowledge that. But I do not want bad to go to worse. But I know it's already bad. And it's not going to get, and it's not going to get better unless we do something.
I agree with that. That I agree with. However, I think where we're differing is that I'm demanding that something actually be an improvement and for the better. And you just want to see something done in the hopes that maybe something better will eventually come of it.
As long as I have zero control over the situation in my own way, I am at least open to something being different.
And I think I just demand better. I just don't want to be lied to. I don't want them telling me we cut $2 billion and it turns out that it was actually 15. And then when the truth comes out, there's not even an apology. There's no transparency.
I will demand better when my demand actually means something. In my mind, this is the equivalent of that joke I made forever ago where I said, hey, let's just walk down to the local CIA black site and be like, hey guys, we voted, you're out. Pack up your bags and go home. And they're like, oh, shucks. That's not what actually happens in the real world, though. And you know what? Maybe that's my fault. Maybe I need to, if I really care truly about it, make a more concerted effort to insert myself into local and then eventually state and national politics and just fix it. But honestly, I don't want to deal with all the bullshit. I'd rather just watch out for me and my family as best I can. Hope for the best up above me, but otherwise, if the wolves come to my door, I'll be ready. And that's all I can really account for.
All right, so I think this might be our longest episode ever. I think that we've surpassed the Big Lux revisiting What is a Woman episode. I think we've officially gone over 2 hours. So
yeah,
I'm going
to try probably have.
I'm going to try to summarize, and you can correct me after I'm done with accurate versus inaccurate.
Sucks.
Doge sucks.
Doge sucks. Well, Doge
so we
does
both
suck.
agree with the spirit of Doge. We both want something to make changes and to make that better. What we disagree with.
It sounds like we both agree that things need to change sooner rather than later also. Yep. Otherwise, we're going to have... exactly.
Yeah. But we both are disagreeing on the execution of it right now. Whereas you think that this is better than nothing, and I feel as though this might be more harmful than nothing in the moment, and I want to see it done a different way, and you believe something better might eventually come out of the way it's being done now. Fair assessment?
Fair assessment. I am even willing to allow that this is actually worse right now than it was before, but it will prompt a better reaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a patient with cancer, and I want you to wait and cut the cancer out specifically and precisely, and Doug says, fuck it, take everything, and we'll hope we get all the tumors. And that's where we're at. Cool.
Well, if your cancer patient is the government, then maybe it's not so bad.
Just gut it all. All right. Chris Lewis update. The Pursuit of Happiness GoFundMe for Chris Lewis is up to $82,840 raised.
Okay, well, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. I thought we'd be at 90 by now.
That's just one of them.
It's fine. There were 9 others, and half of them didn't have anything. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's what Chris Lewis is still apparently getting. Antonio Brown has not updated his thing for since April 3rd, when he basically said, oops, just realized that this might be a scam. Everybody please wait until I verify, because I'm not going to pay him out if it turns out to be a scam. So he hasn't posted since then.
Oh my God.
Which is interesting to me.
To his credit, he probably read the update and was like, fuck.
Yeah, yeah. There were donations made as recently as 3 days ago.
Jesus.
So people are still donating without doing any further research, without reading about the fact this is a fraud. And there's some really interesting comments being made with some of these.
I feel like this is proving my point earlier about how people just get entrenched and just only want to see the headlines that support them.
And I think perhaps it might be... I think it's feeding back into my point where I think people are just generally stupid. I've lost faith in people's ability to think for themselves.
To all of the people who are still faithfully listening to us as we spent 20 minutes just yelling at each other and not offering you anything substantive, we can crowdsource and buy a little island and make our own little country. And we can all just oversight each other, and it'll be great. It'll be so much fun.
We're going to have to create a new Patreon level for that.
There's
build your own island Patreon level.
No, there's that one. I should find it. There's that little like oil drilling or mining station in the middle of the ocean that declared itself its own country like 30 years ago because
we should talk about that soon too, because I know nothing about it. Okay.
Its population is like 200 and some. It's great.
Okay.
They're their own, but they're their own sovereign nation officially.
Well, for the record, Chris Lewis's Pursuit of Happiness GoFundMe has enough money in it. If you're looking at the high end of the average price of a Happy Meal, he can buy 10,355 Happy Meals right now with that GoFundMe. That's a lot for 3 kids. That'll last you a while. It's cheaper than babysitting, right?
Someone did the math on buying pizzas and just saving them over the long haul, talking about how long they could feed themselves. So I'm just like, I'm going back to that. I can't do this.
All right, let's get out of here because I really have to wake up in 3 hours and go work a full day.
Yeah, okay.
And I've now put in like 14 hours today. So let's.
Well, you yelled at me so much I don't feel bad for you now.
I did yell at you a lot. You deserved it tonight, Douglas.
No.
That's how you know I really feel a way about a thing when I call you Douglas. I heard that listening to the previous episode. I was like, wow, I called him Douglas. And then again.
Yeah, the only person who calls me Douglas when they're not mad at me is my father. Well, of course you think you're right. You'd be stupid to think you're wrong.
I often think I'm incorrect.
Well, I listened to a bunch
Tonight
of...
I do not.
No, you're definitely right if you start with your assumptions.
And so am I. So, yay.
I just can't help but see the conflict of interest in this. And because I have an insider track on this and I know how it works, I see the edge it gives.
It's funny to see our same viewpoints come through because we had this way back in number 8 or 9 when we were doing our tribalism talk. I sit there and say, of course there will be conflicts of interest. And that's kind of my starting point is of course there will be. So let's just go for it. Why not? And it just works out that way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was listening to a bunch of talk about dogs and dog attacks and everything else recently for some reason. So that's where most of my stuff is around. Tom.
Yes.
How do you keep ducks from constantly attacking your dog?
Keep ducks from attacking your dog.
Yes. Quack, quack.
I wish I had more brain power right now. I don't know. How do you keep ducks from attacking your dog?
Make sure it's not a purebred.
That's good. I was going quacks, bills. I was not going to get to purebred. That's good.
Yeah, thank you.
I like that. What do you think we should do with all the people that rely on government handouts but refuse to work?
My goodness, there's so many answers to this.
There's only one really good answer.
To people who rely on government handouts
but refuse
to work?
Yep. How do we solve that problem? What do we do with those people?
Make them work for the government.
No.
Oh, come on. That's perfect. They got government handouts. They're working.
Because then they're still accepting government handouts and refusing to work, what you do is you kick them out of Congress.
Ha. That's not even funny to me anymore. Because you pull the stat lines of the number of sitting Congress people who have like drunk driving on their record and who still have back paid taxes. Like 15% of sitting Congress has back taxes that they're still on back pay. Like they haven't even paid all their fucking taxes and they work for the fucking government. It's ludicrous. It's they're fucking criminals. That's why they won't ever let themselves not trade. Sorry, it's not even funny anymore. That was a stupid joke. I hate you.
You're welcome, then.
How do you stop a dog from barking in your front yard?
Stop a dog from barking in your front yard. I'm going down a real dark humor route with this, and I don't think I want to say any of those.
No, you probably shouldn't then.
Okay, I don't know. How do you stop him from barking in your front yard?
Move him to the backyard.
See, I thought that too. I thought it was dumb.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I figured. I actually thought you'd get that one. Like,
Well, and I did.
This, is it?
And I did. I said my thought was, well, you bring him inside.
Prove it.
Yeah, I can't do that. Yeah, can't do that. We talked about the credit score dropping a little bit, and it made me look at mine. And I honestly, after I looked at mine, I couldn't figure out why my credit score was so low. Because every time a tax collector called, they said my payments had been outstanding.
Mm-hmm. That's like why the Scarecrow got promoted, because he was outstanding in his field.
Yep.
Yes. All right, regular one. What's the difference between a dad joke and a bad joke?
Condom?
The first letter.
That too.
Yeah.
I feel like I told a version of that joke a long time ago.
Probably.
Why does the government hate organized crime?
Because it's competition.
There you go. Good. All right.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I thought we were telling jokes, Tom.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You know, this addenda, I listened to the Time Suck about Blackbeard. That's another really good episode. If you have extra time,
listed
go
that
listen
one
to it.
earlier as one of your favorites. Like, yeah.
That was a really good one. And not only did I realize that Blackbeard in his,
The
fame,
Silk Road episode is when you talked about Blackbeard. Yeah.
vaguely, yes. He only like terrorized the seas for 3 or 5 years or something. It wasn't like some 10-year whatever kind of period.
Really?
And the pirates started as basically mercenaries for local governments. And he pulled a lot of data from what the governments were commanding, controlling, and seizing and all that. And basically, the pirates moved from hired muscle to a problem because they started to take stuff that the local governors along the American coast were actually trying to take for themselves. So that's why they started going after the pirates. Was really it seems like because the pirates were actually getting in on their bag.
Interesting.
The amount of like wealth that these governors had was like in the tens of millions of dollars back in like the 16 and 1700s. The pirates were seizing, $1 million.
I need to go back and re-listen to that because it's been a long time.
It's just more proof that the highest organized crime is government.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's just the truth. That's just how it is through most of human history.
What do Viagra and the Chinese government have in common?
Hold on. You could have listed like any other government and I would have taken it seriously, but now
No, this one's important because it's a very offensive joke and it has to be the Chinese government to really work.
I realize this and I'm going to try to rack my brain to become more insensitive.
This is one of those jokes that could get us canceled. It's one of those, yeah.
What do Viagra and the Chinese government have in common?
Mm-hmm.
See, I feel like it's something about 4 hours, like the the erect time frame we have to call a doctor. But it's probably not that. It's probably something about God, I don't even know. They both are used by people with limp dicks. I don't know.
Years of fixing erections.
Man. I do like that one.
Let that one soak in. You'll like it
It's
more
not
and more.
as good as Priest and Friars. I don't know if you'll ever top that one.
No, that one was really good. And the hamster one is way up there still, too.
No, it wasn't. The hamster was not way up there.
I've gotten so much feedback about how people love that joke. Like, you're one of the very few that didn't care for it.
Well, I didn't care for it because I had no chance of getting that. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, the Friars one was good. The 10-year-old buns one was good.
No, like I stand by that they're not 10-year-old buns. They're more like 5 or 6-year-old buns. That's just not the point. I was actually thinking today we haven't like really yelled at each other in a while.
Oh,
Which is fun.
we got some good yelling tonight for 2 hours.
This was good. All right, so homework. Help us found a new nation. Ready, go. No, we need to push this a little bit more. We have a Patreon. We have a Linktree. We now have 60 episodes, and we're able to mostly talk to each other about things that are really hot button issues. We're here to try to help affect some little tiny change in the world for the forgotten dads. Subscribe to us, like us. We can do stuff. And if we band together, we can do more stuff.
That's the least charismatic speech I've heard in a long time.
You are welcome.
All right.
There's a reason you had a marketing company and I didn't.
That's fair. That's fair. My dad homework is simple. If you're listening to us on Spotify or if you're watching us somewhere where you can review us, just give us a review. Easy peasy. This might not be the episode to review because we were super long-winded and yelled a lot, but give us a review. Click that 4 or 5 stars somewhere in there. Give us something. Help get that up. Help us get in the algorithms. We recently took a big jump on some Spotify access. So, yeah, help us out. Click the button. Give us some stars. You do it for your Uber driver. Do it for us. And we appreciate you.
Yeah, what Tom said.
All right. Screw Doge for not living up to expectations. Doug, thank you for arguing with me. And
anytime.
Go, Dad, go.
Go, Dad,
Thanks
go.
for listening.